Chapter 353. Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan watched as Yun Yang and Lei Dongtian fought and learned from each other. Their gazes were different. Yu Rulan thought to herself, this young master Yin is intelligent, scheming and farsighted. He's a rare talent in this world. He'll be an influential figure in the future. Lingxi is blessed to have such a great man. Ji Lingxi thought to herself, this fellow is cunning. How could he get along so well with his own enemy? I think he'll directly screw this fool to death. He's too cunning, but I like it. That night, Ji Lingxi and Yu Rulan were whispering to each other in a room when someone knocked on the door. It was Yin Yang's voice. Are you asleep? Go open the door, Lingxi. Yu Rulan rolled her eyes. Your sweetheart is here, Ji Lingxi said with a dark expression. What is this bastard doing here so late at night? It can't be anything good. He's the perfect example of a gigolo with no good intentions. She grumbled internally, but still stood up to open the door. Not asleep yet. Yun Yang came in. Ji Lingxi retorted immediately. Do we look like we're asleep to you? Do you dare come in if we're asleep? Who's going to open the door for you if we're really asleep? Yun Yang rubbed his nose. My question was stupid. It's good that you're not asleep yet. I have a pot of good tea here. Let's have a taste. I've heard from Lingxi that Sister Lan is an expert in tasting tea. Yu Rulan glanced at Ji Lingxi and said, Lingxi really has no secrets in front of you. I guess the little bit of information this sister has left has been sold out by her. Ji Lingxi blushed and rolled her eyes at Yun Yang openly, thinking, when did I tell him anything about Sister Lan? Why don't I have any recollection of it? What the hell? As he spoke, Yun Yang took out a bag of tea leaves. Once he opened the bag, a rich aroma of tea wafted out. Great tea. Yu Rulan's eyes shone. Great tea. What tea is this? Why does it have such an aroma? This is the first time I've encountered tea leaves that can emit such a fragrance, even before they've been soaked. It seems like I'm in luck today. Yun Yang smiled and said, the name of this tea suits Sister Lan and Lingxi very well. They're exceptionally compatible with each other. What name? Yu Rulan and Ji Lingxi asked together, obviously intrigued by Yun Yang. The name of this tea is Heavenly Fragrance State Color. Yun Yang said, it smells good, and it smells even better when it's brewed. The color of the brewed tea is like the azure sea and blue sky. It's so beautiful. There's actually such a good tea in this world. It's the cream of the crop. The two women became more and more fascinated, and their interest in the tea grew. The tea was good, and the name was good. Heavenly Fragrance and National Beauty. Hearing this, he immediately felt that this tea wasn't ordinary tea. With the two of us appraising it, it really brought out the best in each other. As he spoke, Yin Yang brewed the tea. After 3 rounds of boiling water, not only was the fragrance of the tea even more fragrant, the color of the tea was also as Yin Yang had described. It was clear and flawless, a sight that they had never seen before. However, Yu Rulan and Ji Lingxi still felt that even though the tea's color was pleasing to the eye, it did not seem to match the name, Heavenly Fragrance State Color, enough. How could they say this out loud? Great tea indeed. Yu Rulan was full of praises. Heavenly Fragrance State Color lives up to its name. Lingxi, try it too, Yun Yang said with a smile. Ji Lingxi picked up her cup and drank as well, saying, great tea indeed. Great tea, great people too. Yun Yang smiled slowly and said, it's true that I came here tonight to taste the tea, but there's something more important. Yu Rulan asked gently, what is it? Cousin Yin, please speak your mind. Before her words echoed in the air, Yu Rulan suddenly felt a little dizzy. She raised her hand to support herself, but she felt weak and powerless. Yu Rulan was shocked. She looked at Ji Lingxi again, and saw that she was dizzy as well. Yu Rulan was suddenly alerted. Yun Yang, what tea did you make us drink? Ji Lingxi felt like she was seeing double. She shook her head and said, what's wrong? Why do I feel so dizzy? I want to sleep. Yun Yang said, it's right that you want to sleep. This is the normal effect of this tea. Ji Lingxi nodded innocently. I see. She had obviously lost the sharpness of her mind, and was only left with her instincts. Yu Rulan immediately realized the gist of the matter and said in a low voice, Yun Yang, give me the antidote. Yin Yang's appearance was already blurry in her sight. Yin Yang said softly, "This tea isn't poisonous. It can only help you sleep. It's just that the effect is stronger. There's really no antidote. The residence of Yin has become a place of trouble. It's especially dangerous during this period of time. I'll send all of you out to avoid it and bring you back after this period." Amidst her dizziness, she seemed to hear Yin Yang say his last words. "I don't want to do this either, but if all of you don't leave, how can I watch Eighth Brother?" Eighth Brother what? Yu Rulon could no longer hear the rest of the conversation. She had fainted, and was not even sure if what she heard now was her imagination. Illusion. Jilingxi, who was sitting opposite her, did not even hear this because she had fallen asleep earlier than Yu Rulon. "Wuyin, you know who they are. You know what they mean to me and to you. You must ensure their safety. This is the highest priority. When they wake up, if there's still no news of me, tell them that I'm already dead. Ask them to take care of themselves, and not to act recklessly. They'll find a chance to avenge me in the future. If I'm really dead by then, tell them that I'm already dead. However, I'll tell you before I die that Yutong's supreme wind is actually Jilingfeng. Ask them to look for supreme wind. Don't mention anything about avenging me. If it's already over by then, tell them the truth. Ask them to wait for me to bring them back." "Yes, young master." Shui Wuyin understood Yin Yang's decision completely. "I understand you, because if it was him, he would also do the same. Therefore, at this moment, he would do the same thing without a single mistake." Nightfall. Shui Wuyin carefully brought Yu Rulon and Jilingxi away. "Young master, you'll be safe and sound. If you're dead, I'll make arrangements for the two young ladies and follow you. If you're still here, I, Shui Wuyin, will continue to fight the world with you." After sending Jilingxi and Yu Rulon away, Yun Yang could finally heave a deep sigh of relief. During this period of time, the arrangements for the people in the residence of Yin had always been Yin Yang's concern. Now Dong Tianling and the rest had left. Yu Rulon and Jilingxi had also been sent to a safe place. There was nothing for him to worry about anymore. "Your father is ready. I'm just waiting for the Four Seasons Tower's men. Why aren't they here yet? Don't they know that speed is crucial in war? How can they be called the most mysterious and terrifying terrorist organization in the Tianxian continent with such efficiency?" Yin Yang was even a little anxious. "Let's kill as soon as possible," Yin Yang thought quietly. "I yearn for such a scene." The northern wind began to howl. The gloomy clouds in the sky grew thicker, gradually turning into a scene that looked like splashed ink. After a while, a few snowflakes floated up and landed on one's skin, sending a chilling sensation straight into one's heart. Yun Yang stood in the yard outside the door with his arms behind his back, looking up at the gloomy clouds in the sky. He could not help but recall that the eldest Supreme Earth would always gather with his brothers whenever there was such weather. They would drink and chat. A cup of wine to celebrate heaven. Snow falls on the ocean's chill. Fortunate to have a brother here, sharing this thin robe. Metal, wood, water, fire and earth. Thunder, cloud, wind and blood burn. This sentiment should always be there. This dream of heaven's heart is complete. How can it be forged by heaven and earth? Let's drink for the rest of the year. This was a drinking ritual that the brothers would always perform when they gathered. Each of them would recite a poem. Once they could not continue, they would be punished with a cup of wine. Continue thinking. Then they would turn around and leave the poem blank. If they still could not think of anything after turning around, they would continue to drink as punishment. Among them, the unluckiest was undoubtedly sixth brother Supreme Thunder. He was behind fifth brother Supreme Flame, so he could not answer when it came to Supreme Flame. Supreme Flame was in charge of the first half of the poem. Even though Supreme Thunder's talent was unparalleled, it was of no use, especially when his talent was rather average. Therefore, it was normal for both of them to drink 7 to 8 rounds of wine as punishment every time they played the drinking ritual. That time, Supreme Flame had spent half a day gritting his teeth to come up with a sentence to make up the number: metal, wood, water, fire and earth. Supreme Thunder had breathed a sigh of relief and had immediately added the other 4 brothers. After that drinking ritual, Supreme Thunder had never played this game again. The reason was that his fifth brother was too stupid. Your father is at a great disadvantage when I'm below him. He could still remember that he had added, how can it be forged by heaven and earth? Yun Yang had wandered from place to place since he was young. He had seen too much of the joys and sorrows of the human world. He was already used to life and death. Although he was the youngest, he was the one who had the most tragic life experience among the 9 supremes. Therefore, Yun Yang's biggest wish was to unite the world. Everyone in the entire Tianxin continent could live and work in peace. There would be no more wars. There would be no more wars. There would be no more sacrifices. All the children would no longer be abandoned. All the suffering would be far away from this world of mortals. His words represented his deepest wish. The eldest Supreme Earth's last sentence was, let's get drunk for the rest of our years. It had elevated the style of the drinking ritual by more than one level. It was the finishing touch, with a profound meaning. When the world is at peace, I want to reunite with my brothers. We will drink every day and be happy every day. We will spend the rest of our lives together. Yun Yang reminisced about the past, and was lost for a moment. The northern wind was chilly, his sleeves fluttering. Snowflakes fell from the sky, landing on his face, his body, and his hair. Yun Yang was completely unaware of all these external objects. He just stood there with his arms behind his back, immersed in the atmosphere of reminiscing the past. It stood side by side with Supreme Flame and Yin Zuyu's cenotaphs. His gaze was empty. When he was drinking, every scene flashed before his eyes. The smiles of his brothers, the shameless act of drinking, the thought of scratching his ears and cheeks, laughing and scolding together. Fifth brother and sixth brother complained to each other and wrestled in the snow. Yun Yang murmured in his heart, a cup of wine to celebrate the heavens. The sea is cold when the snow falls. It's fortunate to have brothers here, to share this thin garment. Metal, wood, water, fire, earth, thunder, cloud, wind, and blood burn. This sentiment should always be. This dream of heaven's heart is round. When the world is forged, let's get drunk for the rest of our years. It's fortunate to have brothers here, to share this thin garment. It's fortunate to have brothers here, to share this thin garment. It was unknown if it was true, but once the phrase share this thin garment left his mouth, Yun Yang woke up from the deep recollection. He actually felt that there was not a single part of him that was not cold, and could not help but shiver. It was as if his heart was sealed by the ice and snow. Yun Yang, who had returned to his senses, lifted his head to look. Only then did he realize that the snowflakes were densely packed in front of him, enveloping the entire heaven and earth in a misty atmosphere. He was in the middle of the yard, but he could not even see the situation at the gate. What a nice day today, Yun Yang murmured. When there are brothers, there's a need to drink in such weather. But now that there are no brothers here, this heaven and earth is only waiting for slaughter. It's really different, Yun Yang smiled bitterly. Then, he shook his head and suddenly recited with his head facing the sky. Snow covers the world, the sky is cold, so is the heart, the air of injustice in the chest, the mountains and rivers are before us. The bones of heroes in the wilderness, the graves of beauties are buried alone. Who can block it with a sword? Who can mend the heaven? Who can turn the tables, to share my thin garment? Heaven and earth. Snow blanketed the land. From the sky to the ground, it was a vast expanse of whiteness. Dong Tianling and the other 4 noble families had already arrived at a crossroads, 700 miles away from Tiantang City. This damned weather, with such a sudden snowfall, let's find a place to drink quickly. Then let's go home. Dong Tianling suggested passionately. Be careful, don't let your mystical beasts get diarrhea from the cold. Don't worry about your 3,600 hearts. The other 3 cursed, rolling their eyes. However, when they thought about it, they felt rather reluctant to part ways just like this. The 4 of them discussed how they should find a good place to have a good farewell drink. However, the snow was boundless and there were no bustling cities or towns around, let alone a high-class tavern. Therefore, they decided to pitch a big tent along the mountain. The 4 brothers burrowed in with their buttocks in the air, making a few cold dishes and drinking wine together. What the 4 of them wanted was to have an atmosphere, not to actually drink or eat. How F*** King satisfying, Dong Tianling breathed in. Eating cold dishes in a cold day and drinking cold wine in a world of ice and snow. How elegant and pleasing to the eye. The other three rolled their eyes. Today, they finally understood that Dong Tianling's name made sense. Winter was really cold. It was at this moment. The experts who were busy working outside suddenly had a change of expression. Right in front of them, where the snow was covering, there was a monstrous aura coming towards them. A few silhouettes appeared in front of them. There were only 4 of them. They were all dressed in white, their heads wrapped in white cloth as if they were in mourning. At this moment, the heaven and earth seemed to have changed color. The coldness of the snow, the coolness of the frost, the extreme chill of the ice, and the crisscrossing sword energy filled the entire world of ice and snow. Everyone's hearts tightened as they immediately understood who these 4 people were. Of the Four Seasons Tower's legendary 5 venerable lords, Saber, Sword, Snow, Frost, and Ice. Other than Saber, the other 4 had actually appeared in front of them. The aura in the air had yet to dissipate. There was still wind and thunder raging. There seemed to be quite a number of people rushing over. Chapter 354. Such a large-scale attack was, of course, from the Four Seasons Tower. The leader of this operation was the head of the Four Seasons Tower's 5 venerable lords, Venerable Lord Sword. In the blizzard, Venerable Lord Sword's gaze was sharp as a sword. Any snowflake that fell into his line of sight would shatter, without leaving a single drop behind. This person's gaze was solid. Compared to the so-called sword-like gaze, it would be more appropriate to say that his gaze was also like a sword. His voice was as sonorous as a sword's hum, carrying with it a domineering aura. Who are you? Why are you blocking the way? His tone was as if he was going to pick a fight with someone at any time, and it was filled with impatience and irritation. The leader of the Chun family, a 9th peak expert, felt his chest tighten as he thought to himself, "What have we done? Why are we blocking the way? You're obviously looking for trouble by talking like this." In spite of this, the other party's fists were strong enough that they could not afford to provoke them. They could only compromise and hope that they could keep their dignity for 100 years by swallowing their anger. We're in a hurry to return home, so we've hurried on our journey. However, the road has been sealed by the snow when we got here. Helpless, we can only rest here and wait for a while. If we've disturbed your fun, this lowly one apologizes on behalf of everyone here. The 9th peak expert of the Chun family tried to humble himself as much as he could, speaking in an unusually amiable and even humble manner. "Everyone, you must have something to do since you've traveled without rest in this weather. I dare not speak of my shallow acquaintance. Please do as you please." Venerable Lord Sword snorted and stared at them suspiciously for a moment before he suddenly said sternly, "So many high-level martial artists are traveling together? Do you think that I'm blind? Tell us your identities and backgrounds. What do you want by settling down here at this time?" Faced with Venerable Lord Sword's sudden stern tone, the experts of the 4 families were speechless. They knew that the Four Seasons Tower was formidable, and that they could not afford to offend them. But they had never met each other before, and they were being interrogated as criminals. What logic was this? However, this logic could not be explained. The other party's fist was bigger, so the logic was bigger. The experts of the 4 families had been in the martial world for a long time. How could they not understand this logic? "We are from the spring, summer, autumn, and winter clans. We are here because of a case of the 4 clans." The expert from the Chun family swallowed his pride and said, "We can only respect Venerable Lord Sword. We would never dare to offend him." "For seasons? For big families?" Venerable Lord Sword said coldly, "I heard that the people of the 4 noble families are doing very well now. No wonder you dare to stand in the middle of the road and block our way in such a snowy day. You must be rich now, aren't you? Or did you find a backer?" On the side, Venerable Lord Ice said coldly, "Boss, there's no need to complicate matters. Why are you making things difficult for these people? We'd better hurry to Tianting City to look for that lei." "Humph." Venerable Lord Sword snorted unwillingly and hollered, "Go!" Venerable Lord Sword was filled with grief and indignation upon hearing the grievous news. But he had nowhere to vent it. He had wanted to kill these people in front of him, to vent his frustrations. The order for the Four Seasons Tower to subdue the world by force had been issued, So what if they killed anyone they saw? It was their bad luck to bump into them, especially when they were in a bad mood. Of course they were unlucky. How could they not see blood? However, since Venerable Lord Ice had said so, he had to give face to his brother. He said, "Forget it, I'll let you all go today. Remember to burn 2 incense sticks to thank your ancestors, if you can go back alive this time." Were they treating Venerable Lord Ice as their ancestor? The people of the 4 great clans were so angry that their livers were swollen. However, on the surface, they still maintained a polite expression. No matter how angry they were, they didn't dare to say anything. They watched as the 4 great killing gods passed by, their cold killing intent still enveloping their bodies. Venerable Lord Sword, who had already walked hundreds of feet away, snorted and cursed. "There's actually a tent outside, and they're even drinking. How pompous." With a wave of his hand, a ray of sword energy flew out. With a soft crack, the tent that Dong Tianling and the other 3 were drinking in was sliced in half. Dong Tianling and the rest were drinking, completely oblivious to what was happening outside. The sudden turn of events sent chills down their spines. When they lifted their heads to look, they saw that the top of the tent had already been flung away, followed by a flurry of snow falling from the sky. F***CKU Yila? Dong Tianling was about to stomp his feet and curse, but his mouth was covered before he could finish his words. He could only hear his guard saying in a trembling voice, "My little ancestor, please keep quiet. If you speak again, I'm sure you'll be worse off than the last time. Last time you were injured, but this time, you won't even be hurt. You'll be dead." Dong Tianling was dumbfounded. Looking at the other guards, he saw that their gazes were filled with fear. A few of them were actually drenched in cold sweat from Dong Tianling's, scolding in the midst of the heavy snow. "What is it?" As Dong Tianling pondered, a sudden sense of dread rose in his heart. To be able to cause so many people from the 4 noble families to behave like this, it was definitely not a simple matter. However, what had actually happened? "Those are the 4 Seasons Towers for Venerable Lords." The Dong family guard was pale. "Let's go quickly leave this troublesome place as soon as possible. The 4 Seasons Towers for Venerable Lords." Dong Tianling was shocked as well, his face draining of color. F***CK. This is indeed a troublesome place, we can't stay for long. Leaving is the right thing to do. The group of people, still in shock, hurried on their way, braving the wind and snow. As they walked, they were filled with lingering fear. Why are the 4 Seasons Towers top-notch experts here? Dong Tianling's face was pale. Did you all offend them just now? Why did they tear our tents apart? How dare we offend them? I don't know what caused the leader of the 5 Venerable Lords, Venerable Lord Sword, to be exceptionally furious. He almost wanted to kill us just now to vent his anger. A Dong family expert told Dong Tianling about what had just happened, his heart still fluttering with fear. F***CK. The 4 Seasons Towers for Venerable Lords are here at the same time. Isn't this a little too much? Could it be that they're going against people like Ling Xiaozui and Jun Moyan? Dong Tianling asked suspiciously. I don't think so. The 4 Seasons Towers men accidentally let slip that the target of this trip is someone with the surname Lei. The Dong family guard pondered for a moment before saying, I reckon that other than Lei Dongtian, there's no one else with the surname Lei in Tiantang City who could cause the 4 Seasons Tower to mobilize such a large force. You said that they're going to cause trouble for Lei Dongtian? Dong Tianling was delighted and said, That's a good thing. It's a good thing that whoever gets into trouble is trouble. Chen Wanfeng, Xia Bingchuan, and Qiu Yunsan, who were standing beside him, heaved a sigh of relief. The 4 of them even thought that it would be better if the 4 Seasons Towers men killed Lei Dongtian directly. The one with the surname Lei is arrogant and domineering. I didn't expect this day to come. Dong Tianling was greatly relieved and said, The 4 Seasons Tower has sent their troops to the border this time. Their experts are as numerous as the clouds. Lei Dongtian is destined to be a grasshopper after autumn. He won't be able to do anything for a few days. That's right, that's right. A despicable person will be punished by the heavens. How delightful. We'll have a feast later to celebrate. They walked for more than a dozen miles. Dong Tianling pondered as he walked, but the more he thought about it, the more he felt that something was amiss. Suddenly he stopped in his tracks. Chun Wanfeng and the other two men, who were walking alongside him, stopped as well when they saw him stop. What is it? Are you thinking of something funny again? Something funny, my asterisk SS. This is the truth. Dong Tianling frowned and said, why don't all of you think deeper? If the Four Seasons Tower's men were to find trouble with Lei Dongtian, we'd be happy to see it happen no matter who dies. However, the situation now is that Lei Dongtian is staying in Boss House. Chun Wanfeng and the other two men's expressions changed. Have you thought of it? We've been staying here for so long, and Boss has never asked us to leave. Now he suddenly sends us things: medicine, cultivation base enhancement, and even a sword. Then, he chased us out and asked us to leave immediately. This. Chun Wanfeng sucked in a cold breath and said, could it be that Boss has long known that the Four Seasons Tower's men are coming? Qiu Yunsan's expression was somber. It should be so. Boss must have long known that Lei Dongtian has offended someone he shouldn't have. But Lei Dongtian is now in the Yun family. Boss is loyal and unwilling to stay out of the matter. If we stay there, we will definitely be implicated. That's why Boss sent us away in such a hurry. Doesn't this mean that Boss is in great danger? Dong Tianling's pupils shrunk at once. His usual frivolous and despicable demeanor vanished without a trace, as if he was a completely different person. Xia Bingchuan sucked in a breath of air, but inhaled a mouthful of snow instead. He stared straight ahead and said, this means that Boss already knows that he's in great danger, but doesn't want to implicate us. That's why he did this. Chun Wanfeng frowned and asked, what do we do now? Silence. Dong Tianling took in a long breath and said word by word, do you think Boss will die? The three of them were speechless. Would he die? How could they be sure? Looking at the situation, the possibility of him surviving was really slim. Who was the Four Seasons Tower? It was a force that even the unrivaled expert Ling Xiaozui could not destroy. Even if Boss had Lei Dongtian and Old Mu, the situation would not be optimistic. Most importantly, would Lei Dongtian and Old Mu do their best to protect Yunyang? With Big Brother's little cultivation base, he would basically be injured if he were to be brushed by Lei Dongtian, Old Mu, and the four venerables in the battle atmosphere. If he was not careful, he would be turned into ashes and his divine soul would never recover. Dong Tianling rubbed his face and said calmly, I want to go back and have a look. The guard of the Dong family panicked. Young Master, it's already a place of trouble and danger. Young Master Yin wants to ensure the safety of the few young masters. That's why he asked us to leave. You this? Go back, all of you. Dong Tianling made up his mind quickly and said, you don't have to do stupid things with me. I want to go back, because I'm not sure about Boss's safety. I'm worried. Xia Bingchuan said, what if the Four Seasons Tower is really going against Boss's residents of Yun? What can you do? I can. Dong Tianling stopped abruptly as the words escaped his mouth. What can you do? Qiu Yunsan asked through gritted teeth. His face was pale from overexertion. Qiu Yunsan's words were cold and merciless, but they were the truth. In the battle between top-notch cultivators, even Yunyang was but an ant. Dong Tianling, whose cultivation base was much weaker, could not even be considered as an ant. He would not be of any help if he went. I can't do anything, Dong Tianling suddenly said hysterically. But can IF * King die with Boss? Amazing. Chun Wanfeng cheered and said faintly, if so, I'll go back with you. If both you and Boss die, I'll be responsible for collecting your corpses. Both of them looked at each other and turned to leave without another word. Young Master, the guards of the Spring and Winter family were scared out of their wits. Ancestors, you can't play like this. That was truly a life-threatening situation. Just as they were about to stop them, they saw a flash of silhouettes. Qiu Yunsan and Xia Bingchuan stood in front of them and said faintly, don't worry, let's go back together. The men from the Qiu and Xia family almost fainted. Bingchuan and I will go as well. Qiu Yunsan smiled calmly. Thinking about it, I don't think I've done anything worthy of loyalty in my life. I'll be stupid for once today and accompany the loyalty. Xia Bingchuan guffawed. Let's go, let's go. Loyalty. Both of them turned and chased after Dong Tianling and Chun Wanfeng, who were already hidden in the snow. The experts of the four noble families were dumbstruck. rooted to the spot like statues. Why are you all here? Dong Tianling's voice came from the snow. I was afraid that no one would collect the corpses. Don't expect me to die with you all. I'm not that stupid. Haha. Haha my asterisk guess. Xia Bingchuan go back then. You're quite valued in your family. Why are you following us? Your father is happy to go and watch the show. What's it to you? The four of them bickered and attacked each other along the way. Their words were sharp and they did not give in. However, the corners of everyone's lips were curled up in a smile. Although she didn't say it out loud, the warmth in her heart suddenly expanded several times. Her whole body felt warm and happy. Let's go. Boss will be shocked when he sees us. Let's give him a big surprise. Zai, what do you think are the chances of us dying? Who's still thinking about this now? Are you afraid of death? Yes, me too. I'm most afraid of death. But we'll definitely die if we go. So be it if we go. So be it if we die. I can't afford to lose face if all of you go. I can't afford to lose face either. Then let's go. So be it. Ha ha ha. As the four of them spoke, they suddenly burst into laughter. Their laughter echoed in the snow as they danced, like four lunatics. Chapter 355. What should we do? Everyone was at a loss for words. Meeting these four young masters, everyone was speechless. Honestly speaking, the experts from the four noble families did not really think highly of Dong Tianling and the other three. They only felt that the four of them were lucky to be born of the direct line of descent and had many benefits. Their cultivation base, combat strength, and experience were all far above them. It was only their status that was lacking, especially after being in close contact with the few of them for a period of time. This understanding was further solidified. At most, the four of them were very lucky to actually have the opportunity to know a peerless genius like Yin Yang, and had even reaped many benefits from it. Basically, everyone had thought that if they were the ones who obtained this opportunity, they would be able to gain more than the popinjays. It was a waste for such an opportunity to fall on them. There were also a lot of people who criticized Dong Tianling inwardly. How could he be worthy of such an unparalleled treasure like the spirited cow? He should have given it to someone more outstanding like me. That would be a perfect match for him. As for Dong Tianling, with that mouth of his, who knew if he would accidentally provoke a ruthless character one day and lose his life at that very moment? There was Lei Dongtian as an example, but he was still not vigilant enough. Today, he had almost provoked Venerable Lord Sword. He would not stop until he was dead. However, if you were to play with your life like this, you could just play with your own. Pray to God don't implicate us. Now Dong Tianling had decided to turn back to Tiantang and return to Yun Yang's side without hesitation. He had even said that he did not need anyone from his family to accompany him. But it had moved everyone. Then Qiu Yunsan and the other two came along, which made everyone even more dumbfounded. However, no matter how unwilling they were to travel together, and how pessimistic they were about their well-being, it was undeniable that everyone could clearly feel that there was a different emotion growing in their hearts and surging within them. It was a passion that they had not felt for a long time. It was the youthful spirit when they first entered the martial world. It was the heroic martial world dream that they once had. Loyalty. This old man has roamed the martial world all my life, and I've been hot-blooded before. I've also believed that there's brotherhood in the martial world, that there's brotherhood, that there's loyalty, that there's loyalty, that there's loyalty, that there's loyalty, and that there's loyalty. One of the elites from the Chun family side. However, after so many years of ups and downs in the martial world, this passion has long been extinguished. I thought that under the sky, only profit was eternal. But today this old man is very pleased. In this Jianghu that has gradually lost morality and justice, I once again see the word brother. Although my young master is a good-for-nothing, immature, often gets into trouble, and is even unreliable. The elder from the Chun family smiled faintly. But I suddenly feel that it's worth it to be able to follow such a young master for the rest of my life. He took a deep breath and said, since the young master I want to follow has decided to go back and die, I will follow him. Then, this old man has decided to go crazy as well. I don't want anything else. I just want to have a hot-blooded time and enjoy myself to the fullest. After he finished speaking, he strode forward and said as he walked, "Today's matter is entirely my personal action. If anyone doesn't want to go, it's within reason. Do as you please. The choice of life and death is not something that can be forced." The elder's words immediately caused everyone to lower their heads and fall into deep thought. Only the old man's figure gradually disappeared into the snow, leaving no trace behind. Hee. This trip was originally suggested by the young master of the Dong family. He was the first to act. "Are you saying that only the members of the Chun family are going to die? My Dong family will never fall behind." An elite from the Dong family stepped out from the crowd and chased after the figure while laughing loudly. "There are people from the Chiu family who aren't afraid of death." A member of the Chiu family smiled lightly and followed. "I'll go for the Xia family." Someone from the Xia family laughed softly and walked out. When someone moved, the expressions of the remaining people became even more conflicted. There were people who stepped out from the crowd. However, there were also people who stood there without moving. In the end, there were a total of 17 people who stepped out from the crowd and chased after the figure in the snow. Everyone was surging with heroic spirit and did not hesitate to turn back. However, there were even more people who stayed where they were like clay sculptures. They did not move at all. After a while, there was no more sound in the snow. Those who decided to turn back had already gone far away. Those who stayed where they were finally moved. "Since I didn't follow, then I don't have the face to return to the family." An elder laughed bitterly. "I've decided to live in seclusion in the forest. Hee. I've always thought that I still have some hot-bloodedness. It's just that I was forced by the situation and had no other choice. I didn't think that when the time comes, I would still not be able to die. I'm ashamed. It's not enough to express my feelings. I'll take my leave now. We'll never meet again." There were quite a few people who also had expressions of shame on their faces. They bowed deeply, and then they silently scattered into the snow, heading in various directions and disappearing without a trace. However, there were still about 30 people who stayed where they were. Seeing that the crowd had dispersed, one of the remaining people suddenly snorted and said, "Knowing that it's death if they go, they still choose to die. Do they really think that the martial world values brotherhood so much? There are actually such fools from noble families. What a joke. When they're betrayed by their so-called brothers in the future, it'll be too late for regrets. What future? What future do they even have? Do you think they still have the chance to wait for their brothers to betray them? You're right. They're going up against the Four Seasons Towers for venerable lords this time. How can they be so lucky? What do we do now? What do we do?" One of them chuckled. "It's obvious. The mystical beast cubs of the three noble families are still in our hands. As long as we send them back to our families, it'll be a great merit." "That's right. However, we can't go back now. Let's just dig a cave here and hide for a while. We'll go back after a few days when everything has settled and we have a definite news of life and death. At most, we'll leave some scars on our bodies and look a little more miserable. I don't think the elders of the Spring, Autumn, and Xia family will say anything." "Brilliant plan. The hill over there is not bad. Not only is it sheltered from the wind, it's also warm. Let's go there and settle down. We'll have to find some firewood as well. We really can't withstand this weather with just mystical chi." "All right. Let's wait for 3 days." On the other side, Yun Yang, whose cultivation base had skyrocketed and his cultivation base had improved tremendously, felt the surging energy in his body carefully. He had never been so powerful before, but he had never felt so lacking in confidence as he did today. Snow fell from the sky. Lao Mei walked over slowly and stood behind him. "Lao Mei, how's your cultivation base now? Has it improved?" Yun Yang asked. "Very much so. I'm now at the pinnacle of 10th perfection," Lao Mei said succinctly. "I even feel that with just a little more, I can break through this realm and reach a higher level." Yun Yang looked at the dense snowflakes in front of him and said softly, "Lao Mei, your life is the most important. This is the first priority now. Don't act recklessly." Lao Mei chuckled softly, his expression indifferent. "Young master, I know." Fang Mafei's voice rang out. What do you know? He walked over with large strides. Old Fong, what level have you broken through to now? Lao Mei asked. I'm already at the pinnacle of the first heaven. Still higher than you, am I right? Fong Mafei asked in reply with a satisfied smile. The competition between these two men in the cultivation realm had never stopped since the beginning. But Lao Mei had never won even once. Bai Yixue walked out. I'm already at the 6th heaven intermediate level now. If I were to face Venerable Lord Saber again, I have the confidence to kill him within 100 moves. Bai Yixue sucked in a long breath. I even feel that my current cultivation base has reached the pinnacle of Tianxian continent. I can even put up a fight against Ling Xiaozui. Yin Yang smiled and said, Pinnacle of the cultivation realm, it's still too early. That feeling of yours is just an illusion born from the rapid growth of your cultivation base. If you were to face Ling Xiaozui, he would be able to kill you with a single strike. Yin Yang said faintly. Only when you grow stronger step by step can you truly see the true heroes of this world. Bai Yixue nodded humbly. He was an expert in cultivation as well, so he naturally understood this logic. It's like a person's wealth. A person with a few hundred silver taels can act like a tyrant in a village. He can look down on the entire village and think that he's the best in the world. He has a sense of superiority, and the villagers will really look up to him and acknowledge him as the top person under the sky. Yin Yang said slowly. A person with a few thousand silver taels can be filled with a sense of superiority in a town. However, a level higher would require at least a few 100,000 silver taels to feel confident in a small city and have a sense of superiority when facing most people. However, even if you have tens of millions of silver taels, you'll only feel that you don't have much money when you're in a truly big city like Tiantang City. As your horizons widen, you'll gradually realize how insignificant you are. Even if you're not insignificant, you're still not at the pinnacle. There was a faint hint of mockery on Yin Yang's face. This mockery was directed at the entire world. When you're truly wealthy, and no one in Tiantang City can compare to you in terms of wealth, you'll realize that you're still lacking in power and authority. When that time comes, your pursuit will be completely different from before. Only when you've reached the end of power and authority will you be qualified to know that there's actually immortality in this world. This is how one's horizons are opened, step by step. Bai Yixue, your current status is only that of a stinky nouveau riche with a few million silver taels in his pocket in a small city. Yin Yang smiled and said, when you realize that you're actually still very weak, only then will you be considered to have taken another step forward. Bai Yixue chuckled dryly. Stinky nouveau riche, young master, your analogy is wonderful and thought-provoking. This time, when I feel that it's about time, I'll give the order for everyone to retreat separately. Yin Yang said seriously. Remember, the focus of this battle is to take care of your own life. This is the first priority. Yes. Yin Yang looked at the swirling snow dragon in front of him and said softly, it's here. Chapter 356. Compared to Yin Yang's cautiousness, who was racking his brains on how to save his own life, Lei Dongtian was high-spirited and full of confidence. He stood in front of the window with his arms behind his back, looking at the fluttering snowflakes in the sky. He was full of ambition, and between his brows was a heroic spirit of challenging the world with his sword. One man, one sword, one against the Four Seasons Tower. Lei Dongtian said with great pride. This young master's feat is enough to create another legend in the Tianxian continent. Old Mu could not help but roll his eyes. One man, one sword, one against the Four Seasons Tower? What about me? Let me ask you, where am I? I'm such a big living person, but I became invisible because of you? It is indeed a feat that can shake the world. Old Mu pursed his lips insincerely and flattered Lei Dongtian against his will. When he said this, he actually felt a pang of jealousy, almost to the point of being unable to suppress it. The only pity is that the residence of Yin is destined to be destroyed. Lei Dongtian looked at the beautiful continuous house inside. It is I who have implicated brother Yun Yang. Old Mu sighed. Was it a sign of conscience to be able to say such a thing? Or was it just the crocodile's tears? Why don't you say that you have been scheming for his yang energy since a long time ago? You deceived him first, then deceived his heart, and finally, you did not even let go of his body. You skinned him alive and swallowed him without leaving a single drop behind. At this moment, the snowflakes that were falling quietly in the air suddenly became chaotic. Some of them appeared to be spinning rapidly. Some of them rose into the sky in the opposite direction, while some of them stayed still in the air motionless. At the same time, an overwhelming murderous aura swept over from afar like the rising tide of the sea. It was overwhelming and unstoppable. As far as the eye could see, it was all white fog. Even the snowflakes that had just fallen on the ground seemed to be gradually condensing into frost. A melodious sound of a zither rang out. Venerable Lord Snow was the first to appear. In the midst of the heavy snow, he appeared in the sky above the residence of Yun. Dressed in white, he was like a ghost in the snow, blending into one with the heavy snow. Following the appearance of Venerable Lord Snow, the surrounding snow grew thicker, and the chill of frost increased. This was not caused by Venerable Lord Snow alone. Venerable Lord Frost had also appeared in the air, standing side by side with Venerable Lord Snow. His gaze was cold and eerie. On the left and right sides a figure quietly flashed. On one side, the sword Qi soared into the sky like a soaring dragon. On the other side, the chill became even more intense, spreading out rapidly. However, the melody of the zither was not messed up at all. It was completely unaffected by the cold atmosphere and the whistling sword energy. The pupils of the four venerable ones shrank at the same time. Ahead, in the tranquil courtyard, in the midst of the heavy snow, there was a pitch-black table under the still verdant flower trellis. On the table was a pitch-black zither. The melodious sound came from this zither. Other than the zither, there was also a cup of fragrant tea on the table, still steaming gently. On the other side, there was a small incense burner with sandalwood smoke rising from it. Behind the table, a youth dressed in purple was sitting peacefully. His fair, jade-like fingers plucked at the strings of the zither in a relaxed and orderly manner. The melodious sound of the zither did not stop for a long time. The purple-clothed youth had a picturesque appearance. He was carefree and at ease, and his aura was graceful. He was clearly surrounded by strong enemies, but he didn't seem to notice it at all. He was focused on playing the zither, and he was carefree. Amidst the whistling of the sword energy, Venerable Lord Sword frowned and said in a low voice, "Are you the young master of the residence of heavenly clouds? In front of Yin Yang?" Yin Yang's fingers did not stop playing the zither. His purple robe fluttered in the heavy snow as he said faintly, "Everyone, please do not be impatient. Allow me to play a tune for you. The residence of heavenly clouds hospitality is meant to welcome you." His elegant voice said faintly, "Let all of you know that the name of this tune is called Joy Fills the Door." Venerable Lord Snow said coldly, "Today's guests are all unwelcome guests. What joy is there to talk about? It should be called an imminent catastrophe. Young Master Yin, if you are still in the mood, please play the imminent disaster." Yin Yang smiled. "Forgive me for being ignorant. I didn't know that there was such an ominous tune in the repertoire." On the other side, a bone-chilling voice said, "It doesn't matter if there's an imminent disaster or not. After today, this tune is destined to exist. It's a pity that you, the elegant young Master Yin, are destined to not hear it. What a pity." Yin Yang's fingers plucked lightly, the sound of the zither reverberating in the air as he said, "Everyone has come with a murderous intent and spouted malicious words. Our standpoints are very different, but forgive me for being presumptuous. Are all the experts here today from the Four Seasons Tower?" Venerable Lord Ice said coldly, "Since you know the severity of the situation, why are you still putting on an act here and acting mysteriously? Are you seeking death?" Yin Yang said softly, "Come to think of it, this dispute has nothing to do with this young master and the residents of Yin. I really shouldn't be involved. I've already understood this before this." Venerable Lord Frost said, "You know it, but you still want to get involved. You're extremely foolish and seeking your own death." Each of the four venerable lords was lawless and hot-tempered, capable of slaughtering the martial world with a single word of disagreement. Although the Four Seasons Tower's order to subdue the world by force and wash the martial world with blood was issued by Mr. Nien. The main executors were the few of them. However, despite their cold demeanor and murderous intent, they seemed to be much more patient. At least, compared to when they met Dong Tianling and his group, their attitude was much better. The reason was actually very simple. From the moment they came in, they had been captivated by Yin Yang's charisma. Just imagine amidst the snow, amidst the murderous intent, a young master dressed in purple and playing a zither, unhurried and carefree, unfazed in the face of life and death. Such a scene suddenly fell into their eyes. What kind of visual impact was that? People couldn't help but want to know what else he would say. Yin Yang continued to speak to himself. Logically speaking, I shouldn't have gotten involved in Brother Lei's matter from the beginning. After all, the Four Seasons Tower is the leader of the martial world. It's extremely dangerous. But I've still decided to get involved in this mess, Yin Yang said leisurely. Although I know that I'm putting my life on the line, I still can't help but want to ask a question. He raised his head and looked at Venerable Lord Snow and Venerable Lord Frost in front of him calmly, saying faintly, facing the question of a person who is about to die, I wonder if the Four Seasons Tower's almighty experts can answer my doubts? Let me die with an understanding. Despite being enemies, Venerable Lord Snow could not help but admire him in his heart. This young Master Yin had a great demeanor and a great demeanor. It was truly admirable. He asked faintly, I wonder if young Master Yin has any doubts. You can ask directly. As long as I know, I'll tell you everything I know. Yin Yang nodded, his fingers brushing across the strings of the zither. A string of notes rose from low to high with a swoosh. Then he stood up and walked out from under the flower rack with his hands behind his back. His front, left, and right were covered in white snow. Only his back was a sea of emerald green, brimming with vitality. Yin Yang asked faintly, The Four Seasons Tower leads the martial world. Its prestige awe-inspiring. For hundreds of years, no one could go against it. Even when facing the world's unrivaled Ling Xiaozui, it had never really fallen into a disadvantageous position. This is a fact, there's no doubt about it. However, the Four Seasons Tower has never been involved in the politics of the imperial court, nor has it participated in the continent's struggle for hegemony, nor has it hindered the rise and fall of the nation. This is also a fact. Yin Yang's tone was light, his expression calm. However, why did your esteemed tower attack Yutong directly without any warning this time? Destroying my foundation, shaking the foundations of our nation, injuring our heroes and crippling our warriors. I wonder, why is this so? Venerable Lord Snow's pupil shrunk. Young Master Yin has cast aside your life and death, just to ask this question. I'm very impressed, but this question, young Master Yin, is destined to be asking in vain. Yin Yang nodded. Honorable sir, you're a straightforward man. I won't force you. Allow me to change my question. May I ask you? Yutong is located in the center of the continent, surrounded by enemies on all sides. It's already a difficult situation. It's fortunate to have the help of the 9 Supremes Lords to turn the situation around. However, the 9 Supremes Lords have all died tragically in the hands of the Four Seasons Tower. May I ask why? Can you answer this question, honorable sir? Venerable Lord Snow's expression grew darker. The things that young Master Yin wants to know are a little too much. Yin Yang smiled coldly and said, Honorable sir, are you still unwilling to answer this question? Then let me change my question. I believe that honorable sir must know this question, and know how to answer it. May I ask Venerable Lord Snow, where is the person who disguised as our Lord Supreme Wind, that the Four Seasons Tower has painstakingly trained? I believe that he won't miss this battle. Will he? Venerable Lord Snow was taken aback when he heard that. How could he be sure that he knew the answer to this question? He had no idea where the question came from, and where to begin. What kind of question was this? Was young Master Yin an idiot? How could he ask such a stupid question? Honorable sir, are you still unwilling to answer me? The so-called saying that he would say everything he knew was actually a joke. Sai, we are enemies. It's only natural that you don't want to reveal your own information. I've taken it for granted. It's only right that honorable sir doesn't answer me. However, your actions of killing our nation's heroes, and pretending to be our heroes to swindle and deceive the public is infuriating. I really don't understand what benefits the Four Seasons Tower will gain by doing so. Yin Yang questioned in grief and indignation. Nonsense. Venerable Lord Snow frowned. Young Master Yun's question makes it harder for me to answer. Yin Yang asked, "Is this also a secret that the Four Seasons Tower can't reveal?" He chuckled softly and said, "So the Four Seasons Tower has so many secrets that it can't reveal?" The sarcasm in his words was too strong. Venerable Lord Snow was enraged. Venerable Lord Sword howled in rage. "Why are you talking to him? Who is Lei Dongtian? Come out and accept your death. After tonight, the residents of heavenly clouds shall cease to exist in this world." A voice spoke coldly. "Are you that Venerable Lord Sword? You're asking this young lord to come out and accept my death? You're not qualified yet. However, if you get out, it'll be a good thing." As the voice spoke, Lei Dongtian's silhouette suddenly appeared in the sky with his arms behind his back, looking like a top expert. Below, Yin Yang's voice continued to ring. "Perhaps I should put it this way. The Four Seasons Tower's policy has always been like this. They never dare to admit what they've done." However, at this moment, the attention of the four venerables was already focused on Lei Dongtian. Compared to Yin Yang, who was an ant, Lei Dongtian was the focus of this battle. They could clearly feel that Lei Dongtian's aura was unusually strong. He was definitely one of the few formidable opponents that they had encountered in their lives. Each of them was fully focused, mystical qi quickly spreading throughout their bodies. Yin Yang's words were thrown to the back of their minds, and they did not answer at all. In particular, Venerable Lord Snow, who had fought with Lei Dongtian before, was very clear about Lei Dongtian's ability. How could he dare to let his guard down now? Naturally, he had no time to care about anything else. However, they did not know that all of Yin Yang's questions, all of his foreshadowing, were actually just for the last sentence. Did the Four Seasons Tower never dare to admit what they've done? Never admit it. Chapter 357. Are you the one who killed my fifth brother? Venerable Lord Sword glared at Lei Dongtian and spoke with a murderous tone. Are you the ones who kidnapped my fiancé? Lei Dongtian sucked in a deep breath and hollered like a thunderclap. Hand her over. Hand over that supreme wind you've created as well. Venerable Lord Sword scolded. F*CKU. What fiancé? You killed my fifth brother. Hurry up and pay for it with your life. Before his words echoed in the air, the dragon-like sword light had already turned into a torrential Milky Way. Without a second word, it attacked head-on. Lei Dongtian's rage grew. The other party was indeed guilty, not even daring to speak to him. The Four Seasons Tower is indeed despicable and shameless. You've never admitted to what you've done. Lei Dongtian howled. Then I shall beat you until you admit it. Lei Dongtian raised his right hand and pinched a strange mudra. With a point he said loudly, Heaven's will is in my hand, bestow joy upon you. Venerable Lord Sword knew that his opponent was formidable and dared not be careless. He parried with his sword and defended with all his might. But he realized that there was no strong force in his opponent's bravado. He could not help being stunned and said angrily, What tricks are you playing? He then leaped up again, his attack stronger than before. However, just as Venerable Lord Sword struck again, he felt an inexplicable urge to laugh. It was as if all the jokes in the world and his entire life had been gathered before his eyes at that very moment. It was an extreme urge that could not be controlled. Then ha 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 ha. Venerable Lord Sword guffawed wildly, his laughter shaking the heavens. Amidst his laughter, he continued to strike with his sword. The sword light was as usual, like a dragon soaring through the 9 heavens. Swoosh swoosh swoosh. More than 700 consecutive strikes were completed in one go, nothing out of the ordinary. However, his laughter was like the waves of the Yangtze River, never stopping. As he laughed, he continued to strike with his sword. However, even though Venerable Lord Sword's sword force was as vigorous as before, it was ineffective. Venerable Lord Sword's cultivation base was not as strong as Lei Dongtian's, and when he struck, he laughed uncontrollably, his body trembling. Naturally, there was no precision in his attack, let alone threatening his opponent. Lei Dongtian's simple greeting had put Venerable Lord Sword at a disadvantage in an instant. He was at a complete disadvantage. However, even though he was in a difficult situation, he was still laughing heartily, as if being beaten to the point of suffocation was an extremely hilarious thing. Venerable Lord Snow could not help but be shocked and immediately rushed forward. Before he arrived, the snowflake blades were already dancing wildly. At this moment, the snowflakes in the sky had turned into the sharp weapons in Venerable Lord Snow's hands. Venerable Lord Snow thought that he knew Lei Dongtian's combat strength very well, which was why Venerable Lord Snow did not join the battle immediately when Venerable Lord Sword challenged Lei Dongtian alone. According to Venerable Lord Snow's judgment, Venerable Lord Sword's combat strength was slightly weaker than Lei Dongtian's, but it was not a huge disparity. At least, Venerable Lord Sword would be safe for a while. Although Venerable Lord Sword had the upper hand in terms of combat strength, Lei Dongtian had the help of the old servant. With Venerable Lord Sword fighting alone, part of Lei Dongtian's combat strength would be depleted. Then, Venerable Lord Snow would join forces with Ice and Frost. With the three of them working together to perform the triple symphony of extreme frost, there was a chance that they could kill their opponent in one blow. Venerable Lord Snow's plan was perfect, but the reality was out of his expectations. Once Venerable Lord Sword and Lei Dongtian exchanged blows, Venerable Lord Sword had fallen into a disadvantageous position. He was even in a precarious situation, where he could be defeated and killed at any time. Venerable Lord Snow could not be bothered with any strategy or tactics. It was more important to rush over to help. If Venerable Lord Sword were to be defeated and killed, the battle strength of both parties would be reversed immediately. Boss, what's wrong? What are you laughing at? I'm laughing. Ha 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 ha. What am I laughing at? Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. I don't *king know. Venerable Lord Sword's mind was clear. He knew that his current state of hysterical laughter was definitely not normal, but he could not hold back his maniacal laughter. He could only maintain the state of laughing as he fought, his situation not improving at all. Bang! Lei Dongtian's foot landed on Venerable Lord Sword's lower abdomen. Venerable Lord Sword cried out and laughed maniacally as he spat out a mouthful of blood. Even when his body was sent flying hundreds of feet away, he was still guffawing. Ha 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 ha. Venerable Lord Snow was even more shocked. He hastily warned, "Brothers, be careful. This fellow knows sorcery." Lei Dongtian snorted. Suddenly, he made a quick turn in the air and rushed towards Venerable Lord Snow. He raised his right hand above his head and pinched a strange hand sign again, shouting, "The will of heaven is in my hand, bestow you with sorrow." He pointed with his finger. Venerable Lord Snow snorted coldly and reacted immediately. He shut off all of his six senses while the snowflake blades danced rapidly, forming a snow wall in front of him to protect himself. Venerable Lord Snow was confident that even if the opponent's combat strength was more than a level higher than his, it would still be impossible for him to break through his defense. But for some reason, his heart was suddenly filled with worry. Will I be able to win in the end today? This person is really too strong. Can my defense really defend against him? This person's demonic technique is sharp. Can he restrain all of us? Will we all die here? How should we deal with this? Thick worry shrouded his heart. For a moment, he did not even want to fight back. He was only thinking about how to break through it. At this moment, Lei Dongtian's attack had arrived. Venerable Lord Snow's heart was filled with mixed emotions. The opponent's mystique is unparalleled. I can't beat him no matter how I fight. What's the use of holding on? Why not borrow the opponent's strength to send me on my way? With this thought in mind, he actually stood in the air without moving. What are you doing? Why are you standing there? Both Ice and Frost rushed forward anxiously, attacking from afar to provide support. With two loud bangs, Venerable Lord Snow was still hit twice despite the assistance of both Ice and Frost. This was because Lei Dongtian was using the seven emotions praxis without a weapon in his hand. Otherwise, the blow just now would have been enough to claim Venerable Lord Snow's life. Lei Dongtian was about to follow up with another attack when both Venerable Lord Ice and Frost stopped him. Ice and Frost came together. Heaven's will is in my hand. Give me joy. Heaven's will is in my hand, give me joy. Lei Dongtian yelled again. Ha ha ha. Venerable Lord Frost laughed maniacally like Venerable Lord Sword. Venerable Lord Ice, on the other hand, looked worried. His brows were furrowed in worry. What should he do? What should he do? Sigh, what should he do? Among the 4 venerable lords, 2 were guffawing while the other 2 were worried, and no longer in the mood to fight. Old Mu flew out like lightning, and stopped the injured Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Ice. Lei Dongtian, on the other hand, was suppressing Venerable Lord Frost and Venerable Lord Snow. 2 against 4. The duo who were at a disadvantage in terms of manpower had actually gained the upper hand. The more Lei Dongtian fought, the more excited he felt. Moreover, he was wearing an exquisite treasured robe. The weapons of both Venerable Lord Snow and Frost were useless against him. His punches and kicks were full of vigor. The 7 emotions praxis that was used in actual combat was extremely powerful and unrivaled. If I can cultivate all 7 techniques of the 7 emotions praxis to the peak, then I can even make one of my opponents laugh to death, and the other becomes so worried that he can't be reassured. Then, I can cut my own throat with my sword. Where's my fiancé? Lei Dongtian seized the opportunity to attack as he asked. Tell me quickly and I'll spare your lives. Ha 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 ha. Venerable Lord Frost guffawed. Your fiancé? Ha 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 ha. What's going on? Why am I ha 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 ha? Venerable Lord Snow was worried. Fiancé. What kind of expert would that be? Wouldn't it be a dead end for us to face such experts at the same time? It's impossible to defeat them. How many fiancés does he have? 1 or 2? Or 10, 100, or 1,000? If 10,000 fiancés are all so powerful. Oh no. He actually has 10,000 such powerful fiancés. The 4 venerable lords had come in a menacing manner. But once the fight began, they were at a disadvantage. They could no longer turn the tables, and it looked like some of them were going to die in a matter of days. The outcome stunned Yun Yang and the others who were watching from below. Well, what was going on? What was going on? Yun Yang, who had some understanding of the situation, was even more shocked. The 7 emotions praxis. This must be the 7 emotions praxis. However, he did not expect the 7 emotions praxis to be so powerful and domineering. Venerable Lord Snow and the others had come with a heart full of hatred, but they had fallen into the trap unknowingly. Even Yun Yang, who had been paying attention to the 7 emotions praxis, did not see how Lei Dongtian had executed it, and how the 4 venerable lords had fallen into the trap without a sound. Ha 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 ha. Ha 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 ha. The 2 venerable lords were still guffawing. Their situation had not improved, and the frequency of their laughter did not decrease as time went by. What should we do? What should we do? The 2 venerable lords were still worried sick. Bang bang bang. Old Mu and Lei Dongtian were unusually ruthless in their attacks. They kept increasing their strength, and continued to pressure the 4 men. Where are they? Where are they? Where are they? Both of them asked as they fought. Obviously, their focus was on the whereabouts of the 2 ladies. However, the 2 venerable lords could not stop their laughter. How could they answer? The other 2 were only worried. The more they asked, the more worried they became. Where were they? Yes, where were they? How many? Was there 100 million? Was there 1 billion? Was there 10 billion? If he had 10 billion fiancés. If each of them came for a month, the 4 Seasons Tower would be drowned a few times over. It was too terrifying. What should they do? God. Of course, they were not so stupid. But now that they had fallen into the trap, they could not help but run in the worst direction. Chapter 358. The first reason. I'm handsome. The second reason. I'm well written. The third reason. I've never missed a chapter before. The fourth reason. I'm handsome. The fifth reason. I'm beautiful. The sixth reason. I'm handsome, elegant and elegant. I'm high-end, elegant, low-key and luxurious. The seventh reason. Ahem. There will be more outbursts this month. There will really be a lot of outbursts. The eighth reason. I'm still handsome. There are so many reasons. There are a total of 8 reasons. Don't you feel embarrassed if you don't vote for me? Therefore, please guarantee your monthly votes. Chapter 359. The four venerable lords would never have thought that the Four Seasons Tower would not only be unable to secure victory and gain the upper hand, but would also be suppressed and beaten up by the other party. The Four Seasons Tower's morale was on the verge of collapsing at any time. The four venerable lords felt like weeping, but had no tears. The Four Seasons Tower had sent out more than 100 experts this time. In spite of this, the four of them could not wait any longer. They left the main force behind and sped up, attacking without even taking a breath. But in the end, he was hit on the head by a heavy blow. To be fair, Old Mu and Lei Dongtian's cultivation base was above them. However, they had the advantage in terms of overall combat power, as they had more people. If all four of them had unleashed their territory together and fought with all their might, they would not have ended up in such a situation, even if they could not win the battle. However, who would throw a king bomb at the beginning of a game of Fight the Landlord? Even if the territory of the four venerable lords was not a king bomb, it was still 4 twos. If these 4 twos were to explode at the same time, it could definitely change the outcome of the battle. Unfortunately, there were no ifs. The reality was that Lei Dongtian had directly detonated his ultimate skill and activated the praxis of 7 emotions, leading the situation in a direction that was advantageous to them. This was equivalent to the opponent throwing a bomb when the four venerable lords were still in the midst of a one-on-one fight. It was a direct explosion, and it was just that one wrong thought that led to the current situation. Lei Dongtian and Old Mu were getting more and more spirited as they fought. Their attacks were getting more and more forceful, but the rage within them did not subside. Instead, it grew stronger. Bang! Venerable Lord's sword was flung away, a large footprint on his chest. Blood spurted from his mouth, but he was still guffawing. Ha ha ha. Be careful. Ha ha ha. Bang. Venerable Lord Snow was flung away as well, following in Venerable Lord Sword's footsteps. He did not suffer a kick, but he was punched 3 times, each punch hitting his flesh. As he spat out a mist of blood, his face was filled with despair and death. It's over, it's over. We really can't beat them. What's more, they have endless tricks up their sleeves and a billion-dollar fiancé. Bang. Bang bang bang. It was as if Lei Dongtian was punching a sandbag. His speed was extremely fast, and he was brimming with pride. Ha ha ha. Is this the Four Seasons Tower's pinnacle expert? His body is indeed useful. He's simply the best human sandbag in the world. As he punched, Venerable Lord Ice was sent flying away in worry, his heart filled with despair. With a kick, Venerable Lord Frost was sent flying while laughing. He let out a pained cry before continuing to laugh. Lei Dongtian punched and kicked. At that moment, he could not help but feel that he was invincible. This feeling made Zhang Xian feel extremely refreshed, and he burst into laughter. At this moment, the snow in the sky suddenly shook for some reason. It was like a gentle ripple suddenly appearing on the surface of the sea, when it was as calm as a mirror. A golden light suddenly flashed. A large hand appeared out of thin air in the snowstorm that filled the sky like an illusion. Then, a man in a black robe appeared in front of Lei Dongtian. He had a ghostly aura around him, and his face was blurry. His eyes shone with a cold and sharp luster. His palm went straight for the palace. The speed was extremely fast. Lei Dongtian was still immersed in the thrill of beating up his enemy, and feeling that everything was under his control. He had dropped his guard and was caught off guard. Just as he saw the other party, he felt his chest sink, as if a mountain was pressing down on his heart. Then he felt a sharp pain. His vision darkened and he was dazzled. He felt himself flying away in a trance. The palm of the person who had suddenly appeared had already landed on his chest. Lei Dongtian did not even see how the other party had broken through his defense. It was not until he was sent flying for some distance that Lei Dongtian felt like his organs were being torn apart. His entire body felt like it was about to fall apart. He also realized that his mouth was already spewing blood. This is the end of my life. Lei Dongtian was hopeless at that moment, followed by intense shock. Who was this person? He was lucky that he was wearing a treasured robe, which had dissipated more than 60% of the opponent's strength. Otherwise, this blow would have been enough to take his life. The figure in black took a step in the air and crossed a distance of 170 feet like a meteor. His palm was like a giant axe that could split open a mountain, striking towards Old Mu forcefully. Before the force of the palm pressed down, the surrounding air had already been compressed into a vacuum. Everyone who was enveloped by the power of the palm felt a suffocating feeling. Old Mu watched as Lei Jintian was sent flying by a single palm strike from the assailant. How could he not know that the assailant was extremely valiant, and he was no match for him? However, the black-robed man had already arrived at his left side, and was about to attack with a ferocious palm strike. No matter how scared he was, the other party had already locked onto him, and sealed off all his escape routes. All he could do was muster all his strength, and let out a quick yell. Bang! Oh! With a muffled groan, Old Mu was sent flying like a ball. He rolled all the way, spitting out blood and pieces of his internal organs. His entire body flew more than 100 feet in the heavy snow. His face immediately turned as white as a sheet of golden paper. It was only the power of a single blow, but it was enough to completely defeat an expert of Old Mu's level, to the point that he could not even defend himself. It was really just a single blow. With a thud, Old Mu's body fell to the ground. His body twitched for a moment before he fainted. Fresh blood continued to flow from his mouth. After twitching a few times, there was no more sound. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. The moment the person in black appeared, he first defeated Lei Dongtian with a palm, then heavily injured Old Mu with a palm. His strength was unimaginable. However, what he did next was truly astonishing. It was truly earth-shattering, causing even the gods and ghosts to tremble. The body of the person in black suddenly spun, and 4 balls of white light appeared in his hands. He roared, "Heaven and earth are boundless, and all techniques return to the origin." Tut! The 4 balls of light flew out like lightning. As they flew across the sky, they emitted a dazzling golden light, and landed on the vital points of the 4 venerable lords. In spite of this, the balls of light that hit the vital points were not soul-stealing but soul-restoring. As the mysterious light approached them, a pure mental power invaded the 4 venerable ones' minds at that instant. It was as if they were forcefully imbued with wisdom at that moment, and they were awakened by the morning bell and evening drum at that moment. The 4 of them shuddered from head to toe and instantly woke up. Once they regained their senses and opened their eyes to look, the 4 of them felt like they had just woken up from a dream and were reborn. What is going on? The person in black in the air snorted coldly and said, "Arrogant and disgraceful. Hurry up and clean up this place." Before his words echoed in the air, he turned and soared into the air. It left a trail of golden light in the air, and in the blink of an eye, it had already disappeared without a trace. It was as if it had never existed. This step seemed to have caused him to step into the void and arrive at the other side. Since the appearance of the man in black, the only thing Yun Yang felt was that the blood in his body seemed to have solidified and froze, unable to control himself. Although there was no identification or title, Yun Yang was certain of it at once. Mr. Nian. This must be Mr. Nian. This was the culprit who had caused the 9 Supremes tragedy. The 4 Seasons Tower's top mastermind, Mr. Nian. Only this legendary boss of the 4 Seasons Tower could create such an earth-shattering force with a single strike. Lei Dongtian and Old Mu's abilities were formidable. Even if they were to face the 4 venerable lords, they would still have the upper hand. With such capabilities, they could be ranked among the top 10, or even top 5 pinnacle experts in the Tianxian continent. Chapter 360. Although Bai Ishua's cultivation base had improved tremendously, surpassing Venerable Lord Saber by 2 levels, he was still a far cry from the strongest of the 4 Venerable Lords, Venerable Lord Sword. However, his desperate attack had managed to slow down Venerable Lord Sword's pursuit. Furthermore, Bai Ishua had fought head-on against Venerable Lord Sword's full-force pursuit. It was an honorable defeat, not to mention the fact that he had only suffered a certain degree of injury before disappearing into the snowstorm. Not only had he completed his attack, he had even managed to escape unscathed. Venerable Lord Sword's rage grew as the battle went awry. Just as he was about to chase after Venerable Lord Sword, he suddenly felt an unusual fluctuation of mystical chi in front of him. Looking over, he saw a snowball the size of a palm floating amidst the snowstorm, drifting towards him. What the hell? Venerable Lord Sword looked over suspiciously and sent a gust of sword energy over. Meow. It was a weak meow of a cat. A kitten. Venerable Lord Sword instinctively felt that something was amiss. Why was a kitten floating in the snowstorm? As he pondered, he saw the white dot meowing amidst the snowstorm suddenly expand dozens of times, then 100 times. A bloody mouth suddenly opened wide. Eclipse Panther. Venerable Lord Sword's shock was no small matter. After all, there had been too many unexpected events in this battle, and they had happened too frequently. It was a pity that his reaction was a step too slow. When he realized that the kitten in front of him was an Eclipse Panther, a ray of golden light had already shot out from the Eclipse Panther's mouth. The speed of this golden light was indescribably fast. It was hard to imagine. Boom! Venerable Lord Sword cried out, blocking the attack with his sword almost instinctively, barely managing to block the golden light. However, when the attack landed on the sword, it exploded into wind blades that filled the sky, making the attack even more intense. Venerable Lord Sword could no longer avoid it. Grunting, he circulated all the mystical chi in his body to protect his upper body. Venerable Lord Sword was known for his swordsmanship, and it was indisputable that his attack was the strongest among the 5 venerable lords. However, it was also due to his excessive pursuit of lethality that his ability to defend himself was inevitably weaker. Now that the situation had changed, using mystical chi to protect himself and resist the wind blades that filled the sky was the last resort. In order to protect his vital points, Venerable Lord Sword had focused most of his mystical chi on his upper body. After all, compared to his lower body, the upper body had more vital points. His opponent should have focused more of his attacks there as well. So. As the wind blades poured down, thin lines of blood appeared on Venerable Lord Sword's body. His long hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, and beard were all shaved clean. Although Venerable Lord Sword had lost all of his hair, he was protected by his thick sword energy, so the damage was only superficial. He was not severely injured. Venerable Lord Sword Fongqing was lucky, but he also felt the wind in front of him. It was a small shadow that was closing in on him. Venerable Lord Sword closed his eyes and let out a roar. His sword energy condensed once more. He had roughly estimated the strength of the sky-devouring beast's attack. Although the sky-devouring beast was a 9th-level mystical beast, and the Eclipse Panther that attacked was a superior grade, it was only a cub and could not really break through his protective sword energy. As long as the beast defended its upper 3 paths, it would be able to preserve its life. Once Venerable Lord Sword returned, he would be able to easily turn the tables around and kill the little beast cub. Venerable Lord Sword's plan was well thought out. Unfortunately, just as he was about to urge his sword energy to defend his upper body, he felt a sharp pain in his lower body. Arg! Venerable Lord Sword howled in anguish, shattering the snowflakes that filled the sky. This cry was extremely tragic, extremely tragic. The final landing point of the little claw was not the top 3, but the other vital parts of the crotch, and it even took away an object. Blood dripped everywhere. It was like a thief who had come to someone's garlic field, grabbed a stalk, and ran away without turning back. Venerable Lord Sword was convulsing, almost fainting from the pain. He looked over in a daze and saw 2 small silhouettes turning into 2 streaks of white as they fled into the distance. He finally understood. There was not only one Eclipse Panther. There were 2 of them. The first Eclipse Panther's attack had been blocked by his sword and was reduced to nothing. Naturally, it was unable to break through his protective sword intent, but it still managed to charge over and attract his attention. The second wave of attack was launched by the other Eclipse Panther. Not only was it a sharp attack, it was also aimed at his lower body, which he had not been on guard against. With a single attack, it succeeded without a hitch. What a trap! How could Venerable Lord Sword have imagined that there would be 2 of such rare Eclipse Panther cubs? He had long placed all his attention on defending against the one that was attacking from the front. He did not notice it, nor did he expect that there would be another Eclipse Panther approaching him silently and launching an evil sneak attack. It was such a simple cover. But he, an experienced martial artist, had fallen into its trap. Who would have thought that an Eclipse Panther would use such a trick? This was clearly a diversion. Repairing the plank road in the open, but sneaking in Chun Song. Venerable Lord Sword cried out in rage. He could no longer care about pursuing the enemy. His body fell to the ground, trembling as he covered the bleeding spot between his legs with one hand, his entire body shaking. That kind of pain was absolutely beyond any kind of torture in this world. It was the most painful for a man. It was incomparable, indescribable and indescribable. His face turned ashen almost instantly. His body was hunched, trying to hold on for a moment. However, he swayed again and again, and finally, he could not hold on any longer and fell to the ground. Although he knew in his heart that this wouldn't really be fatal. And as long as he recuperated, even his cultivation wouldn't be damaged. He didn't know why, but he felt that he had reached a state of utter despair. That thing had been brutally torn apart, leaving only one. He did not know if it could still be used in the future. This was the biggest concern for Venerable Lord Sword. When other parts of the body were damaged, as long as one's mystical chi cultivation base had reached a certain level, one could naturally regrow a severed limb. However, it was impossible to do so here in the head. Therefore, the most important thing was to have two heads. This was a well-known saying. Venerable Lord Sword had thought that there were two heads as well. But it was only today that he understood that there were actually four. Venerable Lord Frost had caught up. He had already overtaken Venerable Lord Sword from the other side. But the sudden change on Venerable Lord Sword's side shocked Venerable Lord Frost, who did not know what was going on. How could he care about chasing after Yin Yang? He turned back immediately to check on his elder brother's condition. Big brother, how are you? Venerable Lord Sword's expression was extremely pained. My crotch has been taken away. Although his words were vague, as long as one was a man, they would be able to understand this sentence easily. Venerable Lord Frost was taken aback when he heard him. Then, he inexplicably felt a chill at his crotch. He sucked in a cold breath and said, This, let me see. Venerable Lord Sword was convulsing now, his gaze unfocused. He was at a complete loss. Although his injury was not light, it was far from fatal. What weighed the most was the inexplicable fear in the bottom of his heart. Venerable Lord Frost did not have the time to be concerned about anything, not to mention the taboo. They were all men and brothers, there was nothing to avoid. He undid Venerable Lord Sword's belt and took it off to take a look. CKME. Venerable Lord Frost's voice escaped with lingering fear. This is really missing one. What's going on with this blood? This damn it, it's actually poisoned. Venerable Lord Sword growled. This is infuriating. He had actually fainted just like that. Venerable Lord Snow was ambushed in the snowstorm as well. The ambushers were, of course, Lao Mei and Fong Mafei. Even though both of them had improved tremendously, giving their all and attacking with their lives on the line, it was a pity that it was inconsequential to Venerable Lord Snow. With two palm strikes, both of them were sent flying. Just as Venerable Lord Snow was about to kill both Fong Mafei and Lao Mei in one fell swoop, two glowing blades of wind ambushed him. Venerable Lord Snow's attack inevitably deviated from its original trajectory. Needless to say, it was the other two Eclipse Panthers who took advantage of the opportunity to assist in the battle. Their bodies flickered in and out of sight amidst the snowstorm. They were extremely agile. Although Venerable Lord Snow was also used to fighting in the snowstorm, his movement skills were nimble, and his cultivation base could completely suppress the power of the two little fellows. It was still impossible for him to severely injure the two Eclipse Panthers in a short amount of time. After all, the two little fellows were too small, and their movement speed was too agile. This alone was enough to hold them off for a while. Where did so many Eclipse Panthers come from? Venerable Lord Snow was puzzled as well. While he was engaged in battle, Venerable Lord Sword had no idea what was happening on his end. He was only focused on dealing with the two little fellows. Although Venerable Lord Snow's mystical chi cultivation base had reached the point where he was impervious to swords and spears, the teeth and claws of the Eclipse Panthers were incomparable to ordinary sabers and swords. If one were to be scratched by the claws, one would be severely injured as well. Venerable Lord Sword was the living proof of this. No matter how strong a human's cultivation base was, it was still difficult to withstand a swipe of a high-level mystical beast's claw. Of course, the situation of the two Eclipse Panthers that were fighting with Venerable Lord Snow was extremely dangerous as well. They seemed to be wandering in a perilous situation where they could easily be annihilated. Even if they wanted to retreat, the mystical chi that Venerable Lord Snow had laid out was densely packed and almost integrated with the snowstorm. There was no way for them to escape. Feng Mafei and Lao Mei did not hesitate and had already escaped in two different directions, disappearing without a trace. It was obvious that their mission was to temporarily slow down the speed of their pursuers. They would not linger on the fight and would retreat with a single strike. Venerable Lord Snow held his breath as he fought. These two Eclipse Panthers were only SOSO. If he had really hit them, a single slap would have been enough to turn them into minced meat. However, the current situation was that he had never faced them head-on. He had been evasive all along, unable to inflict any fatal damage on them. Dragging the fight on was the most troublesome part. Seeing that Yin Yang had disappeared without a trace, it seemed that only Venerable Lord Ice had pursued the Eclipse Panthers among the four of them. The situation was not optimistic. Chapter 361. Although Lei Dongtian had been severely injured by the boss, his injuries were still unknown. If he still had some combat power, even if it was only a small portion, there was still a chance that he could escape. Once such a formidable foe escaped, he would not be able to eat or sleep in peace. Venerable Lord Snow's anxiety was unprecedented. He was about to activate his mystical chi and expend a large amount of his chi to unleash the snow territory to annihilate these two detestable Eclipse Panthers. However, at this moment, Venerable Lord Frost's exclamation could be heard. "Boss! Boss, you! Damn it, it's poisonous!" His voice was filled with extreme panic and anxiety. Venerable Lord Snow's heart skipped a beat. Suddenly, he heard the sound of wind from both sides, piercing through his eardrums. "What's that?" Venerable Lord Snow's heart skipped a beat as he quickly gathered mystical chi to protect his body. At the same time, his body spun rapidly as countless snowflake blades circled around him. He hollered, "Ha!" His palms separated to the left and right as he struck out. The two palms struck out, creating two black holes that were especially eye-catching in the heavy snow. Almost at the same time when the black holes appeared, two beams of golden light flew over from both sides, rushing into the black holes like a meteor chasing after the moon. Then a loud explosion could be heard. Two beams of golden light collided with Venerable Lord Snow's palm force. The impact was earth-shattering, the ground quaked and the mountains shook. The impact was so great that the residents of Yin, which was already in ruins, leaped up from the ground, causing dust and gravel to fly everywhere. Dust and smoke filled the sky as far as the eye could see. Even the falling snow was completely covered by the smoke. Then, two weak cries could be heard. It was the two little white shadows that had been attacking from both sides flying away like kites with broken strings. Right in front, the two little fellows that were initially trapped had taken the opportunity to escape, turning around and sprinting away without hesitation. It could be clearly seen that the two little fellows that had escaped from the shroud of Venerable Lord Snow's aura had caught up with the two little fellows that had been thrown away. They bit on the back of their necks and disappeared with a swoosh. 4. There are actually 4 Eclipse Panthers? Venerable Lord Snow felt a chill run down his spine. Where did so many Eclipse Panthers come from? How could there be 4 Eclipse Panthers? According to the information, were there 4 Eclipse Panthers in the world? Was this the residence of Yin? Or the den of a leopard? He did not have time to think about it as he rushed toward Venerable Lord Sword, eager to know what had happened there. The screams of Venerable Lord Sword and Venerable Lord Frost had long disturbed Venerable Lord Snow. After all, there had been too many accidents that night. It was as if everything was out of his expectations and beyond reason. When Venerable Lord Snow rushed over to have a look, his scalp went numb with just one look. He stood there in a daze, not knowing what to do. Venerable Lord Sword's lower body was covered in blood, his naked lower body a mess of flesh and blood. It was unclear where he had been injured, but the blood that flowed out was surprisingly green, and it was slowly congealing. However, this kind of condensation was clearly not a normal condensation. Instead, it was a kind of solidification similar to being completely frozen. Snow, frost, and ice venerable were all skilled in the way of ice, so they naturally knew what was going on. What happened? Venerable Lord Snow's heart was in his throat as he asked, hoping for the best. What happened to Boss? Is it serious? Boss, Venerable Lord Frost was at a loss. Boss's lower body is severely injured, though the balls were one of the Eclipse Panther's claws. What's worse is that the Eclipse Panther's claws are stained with blood coagulation poison. Blood coagulation poison. Venerable Lord Snow could only feel a buzz in his head as he felt dizzy. How could he be so badly injured? How could he be so vicious? Boss has fallen into a deep coma. His mystical chi is scattered and difficult to gather. It's obvious that his body and mind are both injured, and it's difficult for him to heal himself. Venerable Lord Frost was obviously at a loss. What should we do? What else did Venerable Lord Snow not understand? The crotch was a man's lifeline. There was definitely a reason why it was said to be his lifeblood. A small matter involved a man's dignity. A big matter involved the completeness of his Tao. Venerable Lord Sword's character had always been rebellious, so he valued this aspect more than ordinary people. Furthermore, Venerable Lord Sword had maintained his virginity for so many years in order to cultivate the way of the sword. As long as I succeed in the way of the sword and ascend to godhood, only then will I look for a lover and leave behind a bloodline legacy. There are 3 ways to be unfilial, but not having a descendant is the worst. Not even a cultivator can forget this. Therefore, Venerable Lord Sword was actually a very traditional person in his bones. He had always regarded this as his goal, and had never slacked off in the slightest. However, it was now that he was only a step away from the realm of Tao. As long as he could ascend to the realm of Tao, he would be recognized by Sword God, and obtain the complete legacy of Sword God, becoming the new Sword God. He was only 1 step away from his goal, but he had encountered such a shocking and tragic turn of events at the critical moment. It was no wonder that even someone of Venerable Lord Sword's level of accomplishment could not bear it, and was disheartened. Putting himself in Venerable Lord Sword's shoes, Venerable Lord Snow felt that he might not be able to bear it either. Perhaps even worse than Venerable Lord Sword. Keep an eye on Boss. Venerable Lord Snow was decisive. I'll go ask Yun Yang for the antidote. Without waiting for Venerable Lord Frost's reply, Venerable Lord Snow's silhouette swayed amidst the snow and disappeared without a trace. Venerable Lord Frost carried Venerable Lord Sword carefully. Looking around, he realized that there was no one else besides him. The world was silent. Venerable Lord Frost could not help feeling a sense of desolation. There were a few rooms in the residence of Yin that had not been destroyed, but they were on the verge of collapse. However, they could still shelter him from the wind and snow. Other than the urgent need for the antidote, Venerable Lord Sword also needed a relatively stable place to rest. The few remaining rooms in the residence of Yin were the best choice. Venerable Lord Frost carried Venerable Lord Sword and moved to the room carefully. For a moment, he could only feel various thoughts rushing through his mind. The 4 Seasons Tower's 5 venerable lords had dominated the world. They had been glorious for so many years. They had never suffered a loss, not even a serious injury. What more when their brothers had suffered a setback together? Now their 5th brother had died in Lei Dongtian's hands without reason, and their boss, Venerable Lord Sword, had suffered as well. There was a high possibility that he would be crippled for life. Furthermore, the disability was one that could not be spoken of. The frustration in Venerable Lord Frost's heart had reached its peak. A moment ago, Lei Dongtian had been struck down by Mr. Nian's palm. Yun Yang had rushed to Lei Dongtian's side at once, and ran with him in his arms. His speed had definitely exceeded Yun Yang's normal limit. Although Yun Yang could not wait for this fellow to die, and wished that he was the one who had dealt the blow to Lei Dongtian earlier, he could not die now. What a joke! If he were to die just like this, how could Yun Yang continue to stir up trouble? Therefore, Yun Yang had rushed out despite knowing that it was a risk. Yun Yang had seen it clearly that old Mu had been killed by Mr. Nian's palm as well. His condition was even worse than Lei Dongtian's. The possibility of him surviving was extremely slim. However, Lei Dongtian was protected by his treasured clothing. Even if he had sustained a considerable amount of damage and was severely injured, Yun Yang believed that Lei Dongtian's life would not be in danger. Mr. Nian, the biggest threat, had already left. Yun Yang had taken action immediately. However, when he had actually carried Lei Dongtian, he had realized the severity of the man's injuries. The ribs in front of Lei Dongtian's chest were almost completely broken. His internal organs had also sunk into a bleak state, where they could collapse at any time due to the palm strike. Not only was the corner of his mouth stained with blood, but he was already in a daze and unconscious. He was incredibly fragile. Just the shockwave from Yun Yang carrying him and sprinting was almost too much for him to bear. He was still wearing his treasured clothing. The weight of Mr. Nian's palm strike was evident. However, Yun Yang could not be bothered with such minor details. Other than the fact that he had yet to cast his wind manifestation, he was running as fast as he could, sprinting out like an arrow released from a bow. It would be his luck if he could hold on and not die. If he couldn't hold on and died, then it would be his misfortune. He had spent so much effort only to find a short-lived fellow. Not only did he have to bear the Four Seasons Tower's attack, he also had to face the Lei family's revenge. Venerable Lord Sword chased after him as expected. Bai Yixue stopped him with his sword while Yun Yang continued to run. On the other side, Venerable Lord Snow was being hindered by Feng Mafei and Lao Mei, as well as the two whiteys who were waiting for an opportunity to disrupt the battle. Yun Yang had no distractions in his mind. He was only focused on sprinting. The series of tactics against Venerable Lord Sword was naturally set up by Yun Yang. He had thought that if he was lucky enough to succeed, he should be able to hold Venerable Lord Sword back and make it difficult for the latter to catch up to him. However, Yun Yang did not stay to watch, so he had no idea of the results of the two whiteys. He would never have thought that the two whiteys' cooperation would be so powerful that they could actually cause such significant damage to Venerable Lord Sword. Basically, they had turned Venerable Lord Sword into a eunuch. Because of this, Venerable Lord Frost was left behind as well. There was only Venerable Lord Ice hot on his heels now. Even if there was only one person chasing after him, the pressure that Yun Yang had to bear was still overwhelming. Who was Venerable Lord Ice? He was one of the Four Seasons Tower's 5 Venerable Lords after all. A top-notch expert who had long reached the Heaven Realm. Not to mention that Yun Yang was now burdened by Lei Dongtian, and his speed was greatly reduced. Even if Yun Yang were to escape alone, it would still be difficult for him to shake off Venerable Lord Ice's pursuit. Of course, if Yun Yang were to cast Supreme Wind's art of wind manifestation and escape at full speed, he could indeed leave Venerable Lord Ice far behind. After all, Venerable Lord Ice was not known for his speed, but he could not do it now. He could not cast this skill. Lei Dongtian, who was in Yun Yang's embrace, looked like he was unconscious, but he was actually not. His gaze towards Yun Yang was filled with gratitude and intimacy. There was also a layer of indignation that was similar to humiliation. Lei Dongtian truly felt that he had been F***ed. It had only been a moment of majesty, but he had been slapped like a dead dog. Who hit me? Lei Dongtian's words were slurred as he asked in a muffled voice. Yun Yang did not answer, only running as fast as he could. An ice blade was already flying towards him. Don't judge me by the number of chapters. Our chapters are the standard 3,000, not 2,000. Today's 3 chapters have more than 9,000 words. I'm begging for monthly votes. Brothers, work harder. Chapter 362. The ice blades danced in the air. Venerable Lord Ice, who was behind him, sped up. He wished he could grab the both of them and devour them alive to vent his anger. The oppressive force made Yun Yang realize clearly that the other party was getting closer. The ice blades that were hovering around him also meant that a long-range attack could come at any time. Yun Yang's movement skill was increasingly fleeting, unleashing his speed to a height that was beyond his current limit. He even secretly activated the wind movement mental cultivation method to increase his current movement speed. It was a state where he did not completely turn himself into the wind, but merely borrowed the force of the wind to travel with it. His movement technique, be it agility, variety, speed, strangeness, or any other aspect, could be considered as one of the best in the world, and it was rare to find someone like him. However, the most fundamental factor in a long-distance pursuit was the depth of one's cultivation base. In terms of cultivation base, even though Yun Yang had just increased his cultivation base by 100 years, Venerable Lord Ice was still more than a level higher. In addition, Yun Yang was carrying a person. Even when he was fleeing with all his might, the distance between him and the other party was still shrinking. It had been some time since Yun Yang had shoved dozens of medicinal pills into Lei Dongtian's mouth. This was also one of the hopes that Yun Yang had placed on him. What if Lei Dongtian could stand up energetically again? Would everything not be solved then? The situation was just as Yun Yang had hoped. Lei Dongtian's unusually rapid breathing gradually calmed down. He looked at Yun Yang and spoke with difficulty. Brother, Yun Yu, you must save me. I can't die. I don't want to die. Hearing this, Yun Yang almost smashed the bastard onto the rock and turned him into a meat patty. You don't want to die? Then, who wants to die? How could this guy say something like that? You said that you treat me as a brother, but at this critical moment, you should say something like, brother, quickly give up on me, and your chances of escaping will increase greatly, with a strong sense of righteousness, right? How could you say that I'll save you so bluntly? Am I not saving you? I've done my best, all right? The crux of the problem now is, how do I save him? Even if I run like this, I can't outrun him. Originally, I was hoping that you would have some kind of secret technique to suppress your injuries, and then heavily injure the pursuers to completely end this hunting show, okay? In the end, the first thing that came out of your mouth was asking for help. In the current situation, you're saying such a king inappropriate thing. How am I supposed to have any interest in playing the role of brotherly love and never forsaking each other? Does your family know that you have such a big face? How could they trust someone like you to roam the martial world? However, no matter how much Yun Yang cursed in his heart, he could not say it out loud. I know, I'll try my best. Yun Yang sprinted forward. If worst comes to worst, we brothers will die together. Lei Dongtian was touched as he said, Thank you, Brother Yin, for treating me with such kindness. Actually, there is another way. You can hide me in a more secretive place. Then, you can go out alone, to distract the pursuers. As long as I am not a burden, I believe the enemy will not be able to do anything to you. Yun Yang almost cursed out loud. Do you really think I'm stupid? Do you think you can hide the fact that you want me to be your king scapegoat by saying something nice? You're still harming others to benefit yourself at this time. Why don't you go to heaven if you're so eloquent? What kind of explanation is it to expect a small fry like me to save you? Behind him, the long-range attack that he had expected finally happened. Hundreds of ice blades covered the sky as they chased after him from all sorts of angles. Some were spinning, some were flying straight at him, some were slashing downwards, some were circling around him, and some were circling around him. Venerable Lord Ice's icy voice rang out. Still running? I'd like to see how long the both of you can run for. Yun Yang's body turned abruptly, his forward trajectory taking on an extremely odd angle. His feet were still charging forward, but his waist had shifted to the left. At first glance, it looked as if his upper body and lower body were completely disconnected. It was exceptionally strange. What was even stranger was that his head was tilted in the opposite direction. Yun Yang gave off the feeling that he was a broken corpse that was only connected by the broken threads. He continued to run forward with the inertia, but his speed was shockingly fast. The hundreds of ice blades that had almost sealed off all his escape routes brushed past his body. Not a single one of them had hurt him. Great movement skill. Behind him, Venerable Lord Ice praised. It's a pity that no matter how good your movement skill is, it can't make up for the difference in ability. His voice had obviously gotten 30 feet closer. No matter how ingenious Yin Yang's evasion had been, even if he had maintained a high speed, His overall speed had still been affected, causing the distance between them to shrink further. Venerable Lord Ice, who was behind him, was already filled with shock. The small fry in front of him had a cultivation base that was at least 18 streets lower than his own, yet he was still running with a person in his arms. Venerable Lord Ice had chased after him for so long, yet he still could not catch up. He had even launched an unusually dense ice blade attack when he was chasing, but it had still not stopped him from escaping. What was this child's movement skill? Not only was his movement skill superb, it was not an exaggeration to say that it was unparalleled in this world. If that was all, Venerable Lord Ice would have been amazed, but it was not to the extent of being incredulous. What truly baffled Venerable Lord Ice was the fact that Yun Yang's mystical qi had yet to dry up after such a long chase. Yun Yang's cultivation base was at most in the first heaven realm, and he was carrying a burden that was severely injured and on the verge of death. There was no reason for him to last until now. In spite of this, the distance between them had shrunk to 100 feet. No matter how superb the other party's movement skill was, he was destined not to be able to escape. A sharp glint flashed across Yin Yang's eyes as he sprinted 180 feet forward. His speed was almost twice as fast as before, widening the distance of 50 feet in an instant. Venerable Lord Ice was surprised, thinking that the other party was going to use the mystic art of life destruction to increase his speed. He was about to take a deep breath to continue the chase. Unexpectedly, Yun Yang stopped abruptly and threw Lei Dongtian onto the snowy ground, sliding down like he was on a slide. Then, he turned around abruptly, a dreamy saber light coming at him. How dare you? Venerable Lord Ice shook his body as 12 ice blades took shape. Yun Yang's counterattack of not running was beyond Venerable Lord Ice's expectations, but he only felt satisfied. You're young and your cultivation base is low. A head-on battle is exactly what I want. The 12 ice blades this time were different from the previous ones. The previous ice blades looked like ordinary flying daggers, but this time, there were 12 glaives. Each glaive was 12 feet long, forming a curtain of light in the air. One glaive after another, they charged towards Yun Yang's incoming saber. It was obvious that he wanted to overwhelm his opponent with strength. He wanted to use these 12 ice blades to finish Yun Yang off. Venerable Lord Ice was confident that these 12 glaives were enough to injure Yun Yang severely, or even kill him. In the next moment, however, he suddenly felt an unprecedented sense of danger. It was an intuition that his life was being threatened. Venerable Lord Ice had always believed in his instincts. Without hesitation, he retreated swiftly to avoid the attack. Swoosh! He was shocked to see half of his robe fluttering in front of him. His expression changed drastically as cold sweat broke out on his back. It was his robe. It had been neatly sliced off. There was even a slight chill in his abdomen. The power of the other party's saber had actually silently broken through the 12 combined ice blades. He hadn't even seen the trajectory of the other party's saber move before he had already appeared in front of him. This saber attack was simply unpredictable, earth-shattering and heaven-shattering, and he had almost been cut into two with a single slash. With Venerable Lord Ice's cultivation base, he believed that a small fry like Yin Yang would not be able to hurt him even if he were to stand still, even if he were to wield a mystical weapon. However, he knew that he was wrong now. The other party's saber actually possessed the power to split him into two. Venerable Lord Ice was shocked, but he was still drifting backward. A saber light flashed in his hand as an oddly shaped saber quietly appeared in it. It was an oddly shaped saber that was filled with sawteeth on one side and a sharp edge on the other. It was almost transparent. Along with the appearance of the saber, a chilling aura filled the air. Once Venerable Lord Ice held the saber in his hand, his body shook and 3 silhouettes materialized. Each of the silhouettes held the same saber in their hands. He had not taken Yin Yang seriously at first, but after experiencing Yin Yang's saber earlier, his attitude indicated that he was now treating this small fry as an opponent of the same level. Even if the other party's cultivation base was far from his, he still had the ability to kill him. This was worthy of his attention. He was worthy of Venerable Lord Ice, using his full strength to deal with him and kill him. An overwhelming murderous aura and pressure enveloped Yun Yang. Yun Yang froze. An image of hell seemed to appear in his mind. He was being pressured to the extreme. However, at this moment, Yun Yang's eyes abruptly glowed with a crimson hue. The strength of his deific consciousness, that had broken through continuously in the past few days, was suddenly linked to Emmy's space. The power of the treasures of heaven and earth that Yun Zuiyu had fed him was initially dormant in his meridians. However, it seemed to have encountered a strong provocation, and was suddenly triggered. Yun Yang felt his deific consciousness blur for a moment, before he entered a mystical realm. Under the extreme pressure, his potential had been completely unleashed. Even Yun Yang himself did not know the state he was in at this moment. It was as if he was fighting based on instinct. In spite of this, the saber strikes were like the horns of an antelope, immortal's footsteps beyond the heavens. It was impossible to fathom, filled with a mystical aura. Chapter 363. Yun Yang's silhouette grew increasingly erratic. His destiny blade's movements were like flowing water. His entire focus was completely immersed in the saber truth, under this coincidental opportunity. Merciless blade. Merciless Tao. 2 consecutive strikes. The saber wind was sharp as Venerable Lord Ice's 3 clones were forced to retreat. Venerable Lord Ice could not find any flaw in such a natural saber technique, let alone break it and win. If he were to stay where he was, he would have to bear the consequences of being dismembered and decapitated. He could only retreat step by step. However, Venerable Lord Ice was taken aback by his retreat. I can only retreat from a small fry? Venerable Lord Ice roared inwardly. F***ck. Your father is 9 realms apart from him. A full 9 realms. This shrimp was at most at the first level of heaven realm. Your father is a true 9th heaven pinnacle. But why do I not have the slightest power to resist his saber? God, this is too illogical. Ever since he had clashed with this kid, he had never encountered a situation that made sense. His movement speed was unreasonably high, and his profound chi cultivation was unreasonably high. Now that he was in a direct confrontation, even his moves were *king unreasonable. Wasn't he too strong? Yun Yang's expression was solemn. All of his attention focused on the saber in his hand. Although he knew that the person before him was an expert that he could not rival, Yun Yang could deeply feel his unprecedented power. He had never used the saber technique of destiny with such ease. It was so smooth and free, like an antelope hanging its horn untraceable. Focus on the saber's hilt. Cold eyes on the world's injustice. You run amok, you commit evil. Destiny blade is merciless. At the juncture of life and death, Yun Yang finally understood the meaning of the phrase, focus on the saber's hilt. Focus, saber's hilt. Cold eyes, injustice. So the heart is open, the saber wields without hindrance. Watch you run amok, watch you commit evil. Under my saber, there is only life and death. Yun Yang had used these 2 forms 17 to 18 times, but he still wanted more. Venerable Lord Ice was aggrieved. Is this *king small fry using your father to practice his saber? Do you think I'm sparring with you? Are you done over and over again? Venerable Lord Ice waved his long saber, and suddenly retreated 50 feet back. With a swoosh, saber after saber slashed through the air, attacking with saber energy. I admit that I'm not as good as your saber technique, but I'll use force to break your technique. Let's see what you can do and what other tricks you can play. For a moment, Yun Yang felt suffocated, instinctively taking a step back. However, his chest still felt like it was pressed against a mountain, suffocating him. He struggled and let out a wild roar. Then he suddenly slashed out with his saber. The saber light rippled, and actually broke the incoming saber wind in one go. It was the second move of the Destiny Blade. The first style. Secular world beyond the saber. Outside of this saber, there was only the mortal world. Wherever the saber was, it would be a massacre. Yun Yang's entire mind was still immersed in that wonderful realm. After the saber laid back, he instinctively waved his hand, and the saber light flashed like a meteor. The second move, the second style. Life and death in a thought. The saber's edge shines beyond the mortal world. Life and death are determined by a single thought. See my saber's edge and know my intention. This saber will send you to hell. The gloom in Venerable Lord Ice's heart had risen to a point where he felt like he was about to die. He really did not expect to encounter such a strange thing. The child before him had actually entered a rare state of epiphany for cultivators the moment he drew his saber. Such a state was undoubtedly precious, but we're fighting now. What's there to be in an epiphany at this juncture? In spite of this, Venerable Lord Ice could not stop Yun Yang even if he wanted to. Yun Yang's entire being had entered a transcendent state. In other words, he did not even know who he was fighting with. No matter who it was all the same to him. It could even be said that once he entered such a state, he would be facing a spirit. It was completely instinctive to pinpoint the loophole in his saber technique and counter it. No matter how much force he exerted, it was impossible for it to have any effect on his spirit. How could this be? Venerable Lord Ice almost wanted to shout. This is a battle. This is a battle of life and death. Brother, you're comprehending now. You're looking down on me. In spite of this, another thought rose in his mind. The saber technique that Yun Yang was using, coupled with his unique movement skill, was a masterpiece that he had never seen before. Every slash and every step seemed to contain traces of the great Tao. Venerable Lord Ice could not help but want to continue watching. He wanted to see a few more moves and learn more about the mysteries of the technique. Venerable Lord Ice took another 3 steps back and suddenly leaped into the air. From all directions the saber wind howled. He had used his full strength in this move. If you can block it, I'll watch a few more moves. If you can't, then die. Unexpectedly, Yun Yang's saber technique changed again, a huge change. All the evils in this world are my enemies. Blood flows through the river of demons. There's reincarnation under the saber. No matter how many grudges there are, this saber shall collect them all. Yun Yang was chanting, as if he was comprehending the meaning of each sentence. However, once the saber was unleashed, an unprecedented murderous aura and an indescribable stench of blood suddenly filled the entire space. This was a move of extreme malevolence. No matter how powerful the attack was, he could evade it with the trace of Tao. Everything that belonged to the heavens was beneath the great Tao, and no power could shake it. Naturally, the more Venerable Lord Ice fought, the more frustrated he became. A battle where his attacks were ineffective, there was no hope of winning, and he could only passively take a beating without being able to retreat. Anyone would be frustrated. However, what could he do? If he did not want to be frustrated, he would have to suffer the saber and lose his life. Therefore, he could only continue to be frustrated, at a loss for what to do. In contrast to Venerable Lord Ice's melancholy, Yun Yang was completely at ease. He was in a state of joy that he had never experienced before. The extremely dangerous situation that he had been in, and the life and death that was within his grasp had all converged into a monstrous pressure. Under such pressure, even Yun Yang himself did not know what was going on. He only knew that the moment he decided to turn back and fight, to fight with all his might, he had suddenly been filled with boundless clarity and had accidentally stepped into this mystical realm. He felt like his spirit was wandering high in the sky, overlooking the heaven and earth. Everything in this world was in his eyes, his heart, his palms, and his feet. Every snowflake, every gust of wind, and every sliver of frost that lingered between heaven and earth were his incarnations. He could sense the subtle changes in any point of spiritual chi between heaven and earth. The treasures of heaven and earth that Yun Zuiyu had fed him previously began to flow slowly in his veins, evaporating bit by bit. This allowed his body's physical strength to be maintained at its peak, and it continued to push forward step by step. With the power of the vast amount of treasures of heaven and earth stored in his body, if he were to maintain his current stamina and continue fighting, he might be able to fight for a long time, even if he exhausted Venerable Lord Ice to death. Yun Yang even hoped that he was fighting against the 4 Venerable Lords, or even Mr. Nian himself, so that he could avenge himself in his current state. In spite of this, it was impossible for this to be the case. Under such a state, one's spirit would always be in a state of extreme tension. It could not be sustained for long. No one was an exception. How could a human be in harmony with Tao for a long time? A moment of harmony was already a great opportunity. If one were to forcefully be in harmony for a long time, they were destined to be unable to withstand it. Even Yun Yang, who cultivated the endless divine art and possessed many mystical abilities, was no exception. However, in Venerable Lord Ice's eyes, Yun Yang's state of definitely not being able to last was already excessively long and intolerable. The more Yun Yang fought, the more excited he became. With a long howl, he actually danced with his saber. Facing Venerable Lord Ice, he attacked with all his might. Chapter 364. This was the first time Yun Yang had used the 3 forms and 6 styles of saber truth, destiny blade that he had mastered in a real battle. Now he had unleashed them all in one breath, forming an unusually dense web of saber blades that enveloped Venerable Lord Ice like an antelope hanging its horns. Merciless blade! Yun Yang hollered. Venerable Lord Ice took 3 steps back in response, barely evading the attack in a flustered manner. Merciless Tao! With another holler, Yun Yang moved 30 feet forward like a cloud of smoke. It was as if he had heaven's will in his hands, ruling over the world. Venerable Lord Ice cursed softly, retreating over 100 feet away, before he managed to escape the range of the saber's destructive power. Saber Laic! Yun Yang's long saber flashed again, as if condensing the worldly realm within the saber light. Venerable Lord Ice saw that the attack was even more powerful than before, and that it would be difficult for him to escape unscathed using normal evasion methods. In a moment of desperation, he rolled 150 feet in the air, and managed to evade the attack. His face was flushed red. The roll of the lazy donkey was the most primitive and effective technique of evasion. Once it was unleashed, there was rarely an attack that could not be avoided, but it was equally embarrassing. Many experts would rather die than choose to use this technique. No matter how depressed Venerable Lord Ice was, he was still the kind of person who could see things through, life and death in a thought. The dazzling saber light seemed to have materialized from nothingness. With a flash, it came right at Venerable Lord Ice's neck, as if it had crossed the distance between time and space. Venerable Lord Ice's soul almost left his body, but his reflexes were swift. He did not retreat, but instead he charged forward. Then his body bent abruptly and fell. His whole body fell down rapidly like a weight, narrowly dodging the decapitation blade. His response was superb. Inverted river of blood. Yun Yang ignored him, his attacks still incessant. A river of blood filled the sky in an instant. From heaven to earth. There seemed to be no room for it, as it poured down with the force of the Milky Way. F***CK. Venerable Lord Ice's hair was disheveled. Not only the back of the serrated knife in his hand, but even the blade had become serrated. With a loud roar, he charged forward. Venerable Lord Ice was an experienced foe. He knew that each of Yun Yang's saber skills was a rare masterpiece, each strike flawless. He had already tried his best to evade the attacks. If he were to continue dodging, the situation would only become more and more dangerous. Only by going against the flow and counterattacking would he have a chance of survival. Swish, swish, swish. 3 flashes of blood appeared. Venerable Lord Ice, who was fighting back aggressively, was struck 3 times. However, he managed to avoid a small part of the blow with his forceful attack, and escaped 200 feet away. He managed to catch his breath, but his face was already pale, and he was drenched in cold sweat. Samsara under the saber. Yun Yang saw that heaven's will had the upper hand, so of course, he would not be careless or merciful. He struck out with the 3rd style of heaven's will, seeking to eradicate evil once and for all. While Venerable Lord Ice was shocked to see the killing blow coming, he tried his best to defend himself. Thousands of ice blades appeared at the same time, forming an unprecedented counterattack. However, the thousands of ice blades entered the gate of reincarnation with the force of 100 rivers, and disappeared. This desperate counterattack actually had no effect. Seeing that his final trump card had ended in vain, Venerable Lord Ice was even more terrified. His desire to retreat grew stronger as he turned into a ray of light and flew away. There was only one thought in his mind: to leave as soon as possible. It was more important to escape. Despite Venerable Lord Ice's reflexes and evasive speed, he still felt a stinging pain from the bottom of his foot. Other than the sole of his right shoe being sliced off, a piece of flesh had also been cut. F***ck, it's not over yet. Venerable Lord Ice almost wanted to escape, without a care in the world. F***ck, he must have seen a ghost today, or was he having a nightmare? How could there be such a thing in this world? Just as he steadied himself in the air, he could see the youth in purple standing calmly in the snow. As his purple robe fluttered, he floated up like a cloud and drifted towards him. Merciless blade. One more time. Not again. Was it really not over yet? Venerable Lord Ice broke down completely. Mother ***, your father can't afford to offend you, but I can't afford to hide either. Venerable Lord Ice was utterly speechless at a certain someone's current state. When an ordinary person entered a state of epiphany, most of them would take tens of breaths to hundreds of breaths. Epiphany was usually measured in breaths, but it had been a *** quarter of an hour. Ancestor, how many breaths had it been? Helpless, Venerable Lord Ice began to run, distancing himself from Yun Yang in the opposite direction. However, he was not really running away. He was running in circles like he was flying. No matter how frustrated he was certain that Yin Yang's state would not last long. And as long as this bastard breaks out of this state, I must kill him at the first possible moment. This child was too terrifying. He needed to be in a state of epiphany to have such power. What would happen when his cultivation base improved, and he truly attained this state? Such a character could not be allowed to continue growing and living, no matter what. The threat was too great. In spite of this, Yun Yang chased after him leisurely even as he walked in circles. Yun Yang's movements looked leisurely, but his speed was not slow at all. The faster Venerable Lord Ice ran, the faster Yun Yang caught up to him. In just a blink of an eye, both of them had already gone 70 to 80 rounds. Venerable Lord Ice was close to tears. He had finally confirmed one thing. Yun Yang did not need to exert much effort in his current state. It was enough for him to lock onto him. His speed depended entirely on Venerable Lord Ice's speed. As long as he moved, Yun Yang would move as well. No matter how he ran, Yun Yang would chase after him. To use a more inappropriate analogy, both of them were moving in tandem. The faster the former was, the faster the latter would be. F***ck, how could I encounter something like this? Venerable Lord Ice howled. This is F***king ridiculous. There was still a series of shouts behind him. Merciless Tao. Saber Laic. Life and death in a single thought. Venerable Lord Ice ran until his tears were streaming down his cheeks. He felt like he was in a dream. F***ck. Your father is Venerable Lord Ice of the 5 Venerable Lords. Somewhere on a rooftop far away, Dong Tianling rubbed his eyes hard, his mouth gaping wide enough to swallow a pig. Is that boss? Boss da-da-da-da? It was obvious that he was overwhelmed and did not know what to say. Dong Tianling, who was initially filled with righteousness and passion to live and die with his boss, saw his boss being hunted down when he arrived. Dong Tianling's eyes reddened at once. Boss had chased us away for our safety. It was all right, his brother was here. But, before he could jump out and shout that he was a loyal man, he was so shocked by the scene in front of him that his whole body stiffened. His boss turned around immediately and attacked. Then, he killed Venerable Lord Ice step by step, until he had no chance to retaliate and actually gained the upper hand. It was too ferocious. Dong Tianling could not even speak properly with his eyes wide open. Even his thoughts were muddled. Is this the boss that I know? This is not the boss that I know. My boss is definitely not this strong. Is that Venerable Lord Ice? Venerable Lord Ice, one of the Four Seasons Tower's 5 Venerable Lords? Is that really Venerable Lord Ice? Oh my god. He gripped Qiu Yunsan's thigh tightly. Am I dreaming? Look at me. It doesn't hurt at all when I grab my own leg. I must be dreaming. Qiu Yunsan bared his teeth but did not cry out. His eyes were wide open as he sucked in a cold breath. Is that boss? It's really boss? My dear lord, whose hand is it? F*ck me, it hurts. F*ck my leg. Xia Bingchuan and Chun Wanfeng were dumbstruck as well, not even knowing how to talk in their sleep. The 17 family experts who had come along with them were also like statues. After all, the scene that was unfolding before their eyes was a scene that defied all common sense. The Four Seasons Tower's venerable Lord Ice could be said to be a renowned expert, even among the cultivators of the entire Tianxian continent. If one were to rank the known pinnacle experts of this world, even if venerable Lord Ice could not be ranked in the top 10, he would at least be in the top 20. This ranking included all the legendary experts such as Ling Xiaozui, Jun Moyan, and the Four Seasons Tower's Mr. Nian. It was also the ranking of the strongest experts in this world. However, what we saw, it seemed like young Master Yun Yang was chasing after venerable Lord Ice with his strength alone, with his saber alone. It was like he was going at venerable Lord Ice's buttocks, causing venerable Lord Ice to run for his life, unable to escape. Venerable Lord Ice, who was renowned throughout Tianxian, did not even have the slightest ability to retaliate. He could only flee, and was being chased like a stray dog. The legendary F*ck the dog was probably nothing more than this. A dozen people were rubbing their eyes, unable to believe what they were seeing. Fang Mafei by Yixue and Lao Mei were in the dark as well. All three of them were severely injured, but they were suffocating from watching. Was this their young master? Was it really their young master? How could their young master be so ferocious? Lei Dongtian was lying on the snow-covered ground. Yin Yang had dropped him skillfully. He had landed on a pile of firewood at a corner. He was safe now, but he couldn't move at all. He could only look up at the sky, but he could only see the sky above his head. He was no different from a toad looking at the sky from the bottom of a well. He couldn't see anything else. However, the sounds of fierce fighting and the sound of blades cutting through the air kept ringing out. He was so anxious that he almost had a heart attack. He was cursing Yun Yang for being an idiot in his heart. How can you be a match for the Four Seasons Towers, for venerable lords, with your insignificant cultivation base? You've placed me in a hidden spot according to my instructions, but how can this be hidden? When you're done for, this young master will really be a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. You might as well not have mentioned the strategy of splitting up and continue running with me. It's still better than this situation. How could Lei Dongtian know that the situation had been completely reversed? It was Yun Yang who was chasing after venerable Lord Ice. Yun Yang wielded his saber and danced in a frenzy, his heart filled with joy and comfort. He had practiced the first 3 styles and 6 styles of saber truth, Destiny Blade hundreds of times in this battle. Chapter 365. Who am I? Yin Yang finally came to a realization. I am the one who wields the saber. Wielding the saber means wielding the power. The power of life and death is in my hands. Since I have the saber in my hands, I shall carve out a clear sky for this world. All the injustice, all the injustice, all the injustice, all the evil shall vanish under my saber. Only then can a man not wield the saber in vain. To wield the saber is to obey the will of heaven, the divine edge. All the evils in this world are my enemies. The rivers of blood shall flow as I slaughter them all. There is reincarnation under the saber. No matter how many grudges there are, this saber shall collect them all. I see. I see. This is the duty of a saber wielder. Yun Yang grew more spirited, feeling that his mental state had advanced to another level through this battle. On the other side, venerable Lord Ice could already feel that he could not hold on any longer. This little monster had used him to practice his saber skills over and over again. Yet each time he did so, the power of his saber skills would increase. There were no less than 100 crisscross wounds on his body now. Even if these injuries did not hurt his tendons or bones, nor was there any threat to his life, the bleeding alone had already made him exceptionally weak. This was a King death by 1,000 cuts in disguise. Along the way, his clothes had been white at the beginning. Wherever he passed by, he was like a white line or a wisp of white smoke. But now, his entire body was bathed in blood. His trajectory in the sky was like a red line, a line of blood. Yet, Yin Yang was still in that state, and had yet to come out. No matter how much you care for this child, you shouldn't have gone overboard and made it so obvious. This is the trend of playing me to death. Throughout the entire chase, with his ninth heaven pinnacle cultivation base, he had never once landed to catch his breath. Yet this fellow behind him could not land and catch his breath the entire time as well. Was there any justice in this world? If you're so capable, go straight to heaven. Venerable Lord Ice felt like crying. Who am I? How did I encounter such a thing? At this moment a long howl rang out. A white silhouette approached swiftly from afar and hollered from afar. Fourth brother, stop! Don't kill Yin Yang, have mercy! It was Venerable Lord Snow. Once Venerable Lord Ice heard this, he was almost tearing up. Kill Yin Yang? I wish I could. But now, I'm the one being hunted. Show mercy? Are you King blind or what? If I hold back, I'll be finished in an instant. What's going on today? The Great Tao is messing with me. The young man behind me is messing with me. And now even my own brothers are messing with me. What's wrong with me? Venerable Lord Snow was anxious, fearing that Venerable Lord Ice had already caught up with Yin Yang and killed him. If so, Venerable Lord Sword would not be saved. Previously, he was afraid that he wouldn't be able to catch up, but now, he was afraid that he would kill him. This change in mentality was too fast. But the psychological changes were definitely not as good as the shock before their eyes. No matter how Venerable Lord Snow imagined it, he could only imagine Yin Yang being killed, severely injured, captured alive, and the most impossible scenario where Yin Yang continued to flee. Of course, the last scenario was what he was most happy to see, even more so than being captured alive. Only when the initiative fell into the hands of the weaker party, with a certain amount of combat power, would the weaker party be willing to compromise, allowing both parties to have a chance to turn the situation around. However, when Venerable Lord Snow sped up to take a look, he let out a cry of surprise when he saw the situation before him. With a groan, he straightened his neck, his face contorted into a hideous grimace. He was dumbfounded. What's going on? Venerable Lord Snow cried out in shock, because the scene before their eyes had truly exceeded their expectations. In reality, it was not his fourth brother who was chasing after someone else. It was someone else who was chasing after his fourth brother with a saber. His fourth brother, who was supposed to have the absolute upper hand, and should not have any problems, was now bathed in blood. No, he was already covered in blood. What do you mean what's going on? Venerable Lord Ice cried out in frustration. King Hell. What are you waiting for? Save me. You're not here to laugh at me, are you? CK, you're doing it again. It was Yin Yang who was chanting again. Reincarnation under the saber. Venerable Lord Ice executed his ultimate movement skill desperately, as he cried out anxiously. Hurry up. Stop. Venerable Lord Snow hollered, his voice rumbling. With a wave of his arms, countless snowflake blades covered the sky and charged over, joining the battle forcefully. Venerable Lord Ice let out a roar upon seeing the situation, and retaliated with all his might. It had become a battle between the Four Seasons Tower's venerable lords against Yin Yang. Yin Yang, who was in a mystical state, could of course maintain his advantage when facing Venerable Lord Ice alone. He could even win. However, with the sudden intervention of a strong enemy, and the simultaneous assault of two spiritual forces, the unexpected turn of events caused his aura, that was already at its peak, to plummet. It was also because of this that the mystical state came to a halt. Yin Yang's consciousness returned to his body at once, escaping from the mystical state. The moment he regained his senses, what greeted his eyes was the oncoming assault of countless snowflake blades and ice blades. The exhaustion that had accumulated earlier came crashing down on him. His bones felt like they were about to fall apart. Even lifting his hand was an arduous task. Destiny is like a saber. Yin Yang roared, mustering all his remaining strength to execute the saber truth. Destiny blades 3 styles and 6 styles at the same time, intending to turn the tide. The saber wind howled, filling the sky with an imposing aura. It was a pity that Yin Yang was no longer in the state of epiphany. He could no longer pinpoint the flaws of his opponent's attacks. The three forces collided abruptly. As for the unassuming impact of the force, the stronger one would win. The weaker one would lose. How could Yin Yang be lucky? With a loud cry, blood splattered from his body, as he spat a mouthful of blood and fell far away. Venerable Lord Snow was shocked, retracting his snowflake blades hastily, afraid that the aftermath would claim Yin Yang's life. He was increasingly confused about the situation. It was Yin Yang who was chasing after Venerable Lord Ice, and had the upper hand. Venerable Lord Snow had only managed to push his attack to 80%, despite his scruples, when he joined the battle. It was because of this that he had the remaining strength to extinguish the aftermath. How could Yin Yang, who had the upper hand of Venerable Lord Ice, be so vulnerable? It did not make sense. Just as Venerable Lord Snow was puzzled, a few roars could be heard. "Don't you dare hurt my young master!" Fang Mafei, Bai Yixue and Lao Mei dashed out at the same time. Far away, there were silhouettes flashing about. "Go!" Dong Tianling took the lead, charging forward. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. 20 silhouettes followed him, rushing to his aid. What's the harm in dying together today? Dong Tianling was no longer the joker he used to be. Instead, he guffawed, his wildness evident. "Come, let's fight to our heart's content." With a slap on his waist, the treasured sword, Spirited Krite, appeared in his hand. Like a flood dragon, he charged towards Venerable Lord Snow. The eyes of the others who came with him all turned red. They unleashed their full power, and attacked with all their might. Kill! For a moment, their aura was unstoppable. Venerable Lord Snow was fuming. If his intention was to chase after Yin Yang, and even eliminate all of his henchmen, he had full confidence that he could wipe out more than 90% of these fellows in front of him with just one attack. However, he could not. He was not here to kill. He was even praying that the attack just now would not hurt Yin Yang's core. Otherwise, it would be inevitable that he would perish together with Yin Yang. The lives of Yin Yang and the others could be taken later, but Venerable Lord Sword's life was at stake. He had to be saved as soon as possible. In Venerable Lord Snow's heart, it was fine not to kill Yin Yang. After all, their target was only Lei Dongtian. As long as Yin Yang was willing to give the antidote, everything could be discussed. "Wait!" Venerable Lord Snow roared. "Stop, all of you! Stop if you don't want to die!" Far away, Yin Yang stood up shakily and hollered from afar. "Stop!" Yin Yang was truly burning with anxiety at this point. He knew clearly what kind of enemy he was facing now and how strong he was. Dong Tianling and the others were like a group of children facing a giant in front of Venerable Lord Snow. Even if they were to give it their all, there was no chance of winning. There was only death. There was absolutely no room for luck. As long as Venerable Lord Snow made his move, the situation would be irreversible. There would be casualties. At this moment, Yin Yang's face was pale with fright. Amidst the fear, a sliver of hope suddenly rose in his mind. Previously, Yin Yang's deific consciousness had left his body and reached the 9 heavens to observe the entire battle. It was because of Venerable Lord Snow's entry into the battle, and the impact of the intervention of another deific consciousness, that Yin Yang could no longer bear, causing him to lose his state of epiphany. This caused the situation to take a turn for the worse. However, Venerable Lord Snow's arrival was not entirely a bad thing. Although he had entered the battle, he did not exert his full strength. He had even stopped in time when he had the upper hand, and eliminated the impact of the impact. In addition, he had said to show mercy when he arrived. All of these indicated that the situation had changed. At the very least, he did not want to kill Yin Yang immediately. Whether his purpose was Lei Dongtian's whereabouts or some other reason, things had not reached the extreme yet. There was still room for improvement. This meant that the situation had taken a turn for the better. Yin Yang was acutely aware of this. Hearing Venerable Lord Snow and Yin Yang's call to stop almost at the same time, Lao Mei, Dong Tianling, and the others were all stunned. Their cultivation base was far from being able to control it as they wished. They had attacked with all their might, fearing that their attacks would never end. Even if they wanted to stop now, it was too late. Countless attacks were still focused on Venerable Lord Snow. Venerable Lord Snow roared and retreated immediately. One of his hands quickly pulled Venerable Lord Ice, who was about to counterattack. His other hand made a circle in the air, and the snow within 100 feet radius flew up at the same time, condensing into a thick snow wall in front of him. Poof, poof! Countless attacks landed on the snow wall, causing it to explode in an instant. However, the group's attacks had also come to an end. Venerable Lord Snow roared once again. Stop, stop. Misunderstanding. This is a misunderstanding. Hearing these words, not only were Dong Tianling and the others stunned, even Yun Yang almost fell to the ground. The weather had suddenly turned cold. Yun Yang's fingers felt stiff when he was writing. His fingers were especially stiff, so he placed them under his clothes and placed them on his belly to keep them warm. This was a great idea. As he placed them in, he shuddered and his spirits were lifted. Chapter 366. Misunderstanding? How could he say that? How was he supposed to explain it? Even when Yin Yang had a premonition that there must be a reason for Venerable Lord Snow to be merciful, he was still baffled. Lord Venerable Lord Snow, how could you say the word misunderstanding? In what state of mind? The Four Seasons Tower has come with the intention to kill. First, it was the four venerable lords who joined forces to fight Lei Dongtian and Old Mu. Then even Mr. Nian has come personally and destroyed my residence of Yin. Now you're telling me that this is a misunderstanding? Is this how you use the word misunderstanding? Venerable Lord Ice turned his head abruptly and looked at his second brother in shock, his eyeballs almost popping out of their sockets. Second brother, what do you mean by this? I was almost cut into pieces just now, and you're jumping out to say that it's a misunderstanding? Do you want to reconcile with the other party and be a gentleman's friend? Just now you purposely stopped my counterattack, lest I take the opportunity to kill that group of ants. What are you trying to do? Venerable Lord Snow was frustrated as well. I don't want it to be a misunderstanding either. However, my boss has been poisoned and is about to die. What can I do? I'm also feeling very frustrated. He sighed and said, I've come with no ill intentions. I'd like to discuss something with young Master Yun. Yin Yang staggered over and asked suspiciously, discuss something? Yin Yang had thought that the situation had taken a turn for the better because of the other party's actions. But he still could not figure out what request the other party had for him to be so humble. Although Yin Yang had considered turning the current situation around, such as giving up on Lei Dongtian, or even killing him himself to ease the Four Seasons Tower's murderous intent, he had immediately given up on the idea. Lei Dongtian was already on the brink of death, and his corpse was not far away. He could not be used as a bargaining chip. Then, where would he have the bargaining chip to negotiate with the Four Seasons Tower? Fang Mafei and Lao Mei took a step forward and supported Yin Yang from both sides. They could see that Yin Yang was very weak now. Yin Yang ordered, Bai Yi, bring Lei Dongtian over. Bai Yishue responded and returned with Lei Dongtian in his arms. Young master, he has fainted. Yin Yang's eyes darted around as he walked forward to check the man's pulse. Nodding, he sighed and stuffed a few medicinal pills into the man's mouth. Then, he touched the man's neck and applied force. Now even if Lei Dongtian recovered, he would not be able to wake up in a short period of time. I wonder what revered Lord Snow wants to discuss with me? Yin Yang was aware that the other party must have something to ask of him, or else he would not have spoken in such a manner. He had to grab hold of this turning point. Otherwise, when the war broke out again, the rest of them would inevitably perish here, except for a few who would have the chance to escape. As for the few who managed to escape, it would only be possible if they exposed their identity as Supreme Wind. Yes, it was only a possibility. Therefore, now that the other party had taken the initiative to say that he had something to discuss with him, then let's talk. He would know what was going on after the conversation. Even if they could not come to an agreement, it would not be too late to run away. Lei Dongtian had been knocked out anyway. Most importantly, Yun Yang felt that he really did not have the slightest bit of strength left. It would be good to recover some of his energy during the negotiation. Recalling that he had just inexplicably entered that wonderful state, he had practiced the saber truth. Destiny blade on Venerable Lord Ice more than 100 times. Just thinking about it made Yin Yang speechless. He would usually be exhausted after practicing it 3 to 4 times. Even if his cultivation base had improved tremendously, and he had reached the heaven realm, he could only do it 2 to 3 more times. This time, he had used it more than 100 times in such an extreme battle. How had he managed to persevere? It was exhilarating to suppress Venerable Lord Ice previously, but now, there was not a single part of his bones, joints and muscles that did not ache. It was extremely difficult to endure. It was said that after doing it for too long, there would be backache the next day. How would it compare to now? Let's cut to the chase. Bring me the antidote quickly. Venerable Lord Snow was so anxious that his eyes were about to split open. Once he spoke, he went straight to the point, stating the crux of the matter. After all, Venerable Lord Sword's condition was dire. Any slight delay could lead to an irreversible outcome. Antidote. Yin Yang's mind was sharp. He understood everything at once, and even knew the other party's intention. He laughed and said, "How could Venerable Lord Sword be so careless? Not only was he injured, but he was also poisoned?" Venerable Lord Snow snorted. "Cut the nonsense. There's no need to ask when you already know the answer." In fact, he was a little surprised. Why did this fellow insist that it was Venerable Lord Sword who was injured, and not someone else? Yin Yang chuckled. "I was the one who poisoned him. Of course, I have the antidote." Venerable Lord Snow gritted his teeth, his eyes spitting fire. "Hand over the antidote, and I'll spare your lives." He knew that he would have to pay a considerable price to obtain the antidote. Thus, he took the initiative to retreat in order to obtain the antidote as soon as possible and save Venerable Lord Sword's life. "You could have killed me and searched for the antidote on me. Wouldn't that be more convenient?" Yin Yang reminded kindly. The muscles on Venerable Lord Snow's face twitched. "If I could do that, would I still need you to remind me? How could a cunning person like you keep the antidote on you? Even if you had the antidote on you, how would you know which was the right medicine? What do you want? Say it." Venerable Lord Snow said angrily. "Time is of the essence. It's the same for you and for us. If my eldest brother can't be saved, none of you will be able to live." How could Yin Yang not understand the crux of the matter? He could not delay the delivery of the antidote for too long. Once it was delayed for too long, Venerable Lord Sword would definitely die, but not many of them would be able to survive by then. What Yin Yang needed to do now was to not let Venerable Lord Sword die and fight for the most advantageous conditions for his side. "What's wrong, boss?" Venerable Lord Ice finally understood what had happened. It also indirectly explained the reason for Venerable Lord Snow's series of abnormal actions. "Poisoned, the poison of blood coagulation." Venerable Lord Snow uttered word by word. As he explained, his eyes were still fixed on Yin Yang, observing his every move. "You're right. Time is not good for both of us. However, I can still wait for a while." Yin Yang said calmly, "If we can't come to an agreement, I'm afraid we'll still have to die even if I save your Venerable Lord Sword. Therefore, the most important thing now is for both parties to reach a consensus. I, Yin Yang, won't do something like shooting myself in the foot, but I won't blindly follow and believe blindly either." Venerable Lord Snow said impatiently, "Tell me, what conditions do you want? What is the so-called consensus?" Yin Yang said faintly, "I have 3 conditions. Firstly, today's matter shall end here. Secondly, don't look for trouble with me and my friends in the future. Thirdly, the 4 Seasons Tower's forces must leave Yutong immediately. If you agree, I'll give you the antidote." Venerable Lord Snow refused resolutely. "This is impossible. My brother's revenge must be avenged no matter what. Lei Dongtian must die. The most I can do is promise that I won't attack him today." Yin Yang sighed. "I didn't say that you can't seek revenge from Lei Dongtian. Previously, Lei Dongtian was a guest in the residence of Yin. As the host, I can't let anything happen to the guest of the residence of Yin in my residence. However, I won't intervene in the grudge between you two except for today. Not today, that's all." Venerable Lord Snow's eyes shone. "You're really only going to let Lei Dongtian go today?" Compared to killing Lei Dongtian, Venerable Lord Sword's life was more important. If Yun Yang had insisted on protecting Lei Dongtian, Venerable Lord Snow had already decided to give in temporarily and change his mind after obtaining the antidote. However, Yun Yang had suddenly changed the topic and set a time limit for not killing Lei Dongtian. The situation was vastly different, at least within Venerable Lord Snow's original limit. Yun Yang sighed and said, "I'm the heir of the residence of Marquis after all. The dignity of the royal family will never allow a guest to seek revenge and kill when he's a guest in my residence. Especially when the Four Seasons Tower has targeted Yutong so many times previously. Our standpoints are completely opposite. Not only should I not help, I can't help. There's one more thing. Lei Dongtian and I are good friends. When he comes to Tiantang City in the future, he might look for me again. I hope that you won't find trouble with me because of this." Yun Yang put on a sincere expression and said, "Speaking from the bottom of my heart, I've never thought of going against the Four Seasons Tower for a long time from the beginning. Since there's a buffer between us now, I also hope that we can bury the hatchet. After all, it's hard to sleep peacefully if you provoke the Four Seasons Tower." Venerable Lord Snow gritted his teeth in hatred. "Our fifth brother is already dead, yet you still want to bury the hatchet with us? I don't understand what you mean." Venerable Lord Snow gritted his teeth and said, "Speak freely. Simply put, the Four Seasons Tower is not allowed to find trouble with me, no matter when or where. Even if Lei Dongtian has nowhere else to go and comes to my house, you're not allowed to come in and kill him." Yun Yang said, "Is this clear enough?" Venerable Lord Snow was furious. "Then when we fight Lei Dongtian in the future, and he can't defeat us, he'll come to your house to rest. He'll come out and fight us after he's rested enough?" Yin Yang smiled. "Your understanding is completely correct. That's what I mean. Now you understand what I mean." Venerable Lord Snow was so angry that he could not speak. "Outrageous. This is absolutely impossible. I thought that you had some sincerity when I heard what you said earlier. Now it seems that you're simply asking for a sky-high price and talking nonsense. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support. And don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.